Okay, welcome. Let me just get a few things started here before we start with this awesome webinar that I'm extremely excited for you to be watching today. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to be covering today is, in my opinion, one of the more important, if not the most important webinar you'll ever attend by me. And why do I say that? I say that because this particular topic is something that hardly any attorney going into the practice of law, or even practicing law, even attorneys that have been practicing for a long time, understand. And in addition to that, it really what we're going to cover today are some of the most extreme and important decisions that you can ever make as an attorney trying to decide what to do with your career. And you're often going to be making these mistakes because you simply don't understand the profession. You don't know the type of mistakes you can make. And it's just a really, really good webinar. The topic I'm going to cover is really could make a profound difference, not only in your decision to get into the practice of law, but to stay in the practice of law. And it really applies to you no matter who you are. If you think you're at a large firm or a medium-sized firm, you went to a great law school, didn't go to a great law school, whatever your background, this particular webinar definitely applies to you. It's the reason it's so important is because you're making all these decisions throughout your career, and attorneys get into this career and they don't understand when they're making career mistakes. They often don't understand when they're doing things wrong, and no one gives you the rules for these. No one teaches you this in law school, even though these are some of the most important decisions you can ever make with your career. What I'm going to talk. People make so many mistakes, it just breaks my heart. And I look at resumes all day long. And that's in addition to doing this sort of thing and talking to recruiting candidates, I spend probably half of my time, at least close to that, reviewing resumes each day and then reviewing candidate resumes and then watching career trajectories. And almost all attorneys make the mistakes I'm going to talk about right now. They make them, they often don't know why they're making them. They make decisions that are bad. And even going into the career for the wrong reasons is one of the mistakes I'm going to talk about today. But you really need to have this sort of career information to do well. At the outset, I want to encourage you to, almost everyone does in these webinars, but I encourage you to stay on it. I encourage you to take notes. I encourage you to reflect on the stuff that I'm writing about. And I encourage you to listen closely. A lot of times people will be multitasking and things while listening to webinars like this. I know certainly I have. But this information is very, very important. And some of it, by the way, may be difficult for you to hear because you may have made these mistakes, or you may believe that making the certain types of mistakes I'm going to be talking about today are actually okay. And in reality, they could have dire consequences for your career. And I'm someone that talks about getting people jobs in law firms. And so I know the mistakes that people make. And I couldn't have imagined when I got into this, when I got into the legal profession, when I graduated from law school, I knew nothing about most of these rules and mistakes that I could be making. I knew maybe 15 to 20% of them. I would say when I worked in large law firms, I didn't know of half of these mistakes. And so these mistakes that I'm talking to you about today are things that I've learned over a quarter of a century of doing this work and watching what happens to people, and not just helping them, for example, like a law school career office would help you kind of launch your career, but helping people at all stages of their career and seeing the mistakes they make because they don't understand these rules. So I will commend you at the outset for being a rare subgroup of attorneys that actually care about, and law students that actually care about what they're going to do with their careers and learning this sort of information. Just this particular webinar could change the entire course of your career. It could change how happy you are. It could change how successful you are. It could change how well you do in your community and how well you do for your family. All these sorts of things are going to be covered today, and they're covered because you are going to be making in your career lots of choices about what to do, how to do it, where to do it, all these sorts of things, and understanding how to make the right decisions and understanding having the right information about this is very important. So again, I'm very excited about this topic, and let's get started. So today I'm going to tell you kind of what information blindness is and how to avoid making certain mistakes as an attorney. I'm going to tell you kind of how There's so much information that you need to understand in order to do well with your career. And what's so fascinating to me is when you start practicing law or when you're taking your first jobs, you'll get a thorough of information. Typically, attorneys will learn all they can about a law firm and what people say about it and how prestigious it is and the pluses and minuses of review sites. And then when you get involved in the legal profession, you start taking cases or working on matters, you will seek out all this information about how to win, how to do well, and you'll understand different aspects of the law. But when you are making decisions about your career, you often don't have all this information. You don't know the pros and cons of making career decisions and making day-to-day decisions. You don't study information like this. Very few people learn about this sort of information. And throughout my career, I've been consulting to people that have started businesses in this space, doing other things, not recruiting, but trying to educate lawyers about different things. And even those people, when I talk to them, only understand a small percentage of the information I'm going to talk to you about today. Years ago, I think it was, I don't know, maybe it wasn't 10, it was less than that, but about 8 or 10 years ago, this very well-known law professor approached me, and he was starting this business, getting all this venture capital funding to essentially provide tests to attorneys to show them what they'd be good at and what all these different things. And he got, I don't know, $10 million or something in all this funding, and then was telling me about his idea and what he was gonna, how he was gonna show people things and change the world. And this business, when I talked to him, it was like I was talking to an elementary school student about astrophysics. I mean, there's so much things that people don't understand. You don't understand it until you're in kind of a situation I'm in, where you're watching, you're seeing like the results of these decisions of what people are doing on a day-to-day basis, thousands and thousands of people over a quarter of a century. And most attorneys do not understand what I'm going to talk to you about. Most people that are legal recruiters don't understand everything I'm going to talk to you about. They understand a lot more than the average person. But I think I really have a unique insight into this, just because this is all I've ever done. And I want you to understand this information today, and you're going to be rewarded by being here very, very far ahead of 99% of your peers, just by understanding what I'm going to be talking about today. And there's just so many imbalances of power about information, and people just don't understand things about their law firm, or when they should move to another law firm, when they should stay, good signs and bad signs, and all sorts of other things about where you're working. You need to understand mistakes you be making based on having false assumptions about various things. And then if you are making these mistakes, you will have catastrophic failure. And what does catastrophic failure means? That means that you spend 3 years going to law school, and working as an attorney is just a complete disaster. It's never gonna work because of who you are. Or you spend 8 or 10 years working in a law firm, giving your life to it, not understanding that you're not making good decisions and having catastrophic failure. Or you make decisions to leave a firm, or decisions to do all these different things that can end your career. And frankly, most legal careers, when they end, they can end in a lot of different ways. They can end where you just stop practicing law. They can end when you can no longer get a job at a peer firm. And they can end when you just make all these career decisions that are going to limit your income and your potential for the rest of your life. So, it's never at the end of your life, of course, but severely limit your options in terms of what you're going to do. So this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to talk to you about this very, very important career information that will help you make intelligent career decisions and get ahead in the legal profession. And this is what I want for you. I want to see someone right now that knows maybe a little bit of this information, but needs to learn more and becomes educated, so you can carry this information with you for the rest of your career and for the rest of your life. It's that important. And again, there's an imbalance of information out there. Some people understand what I'm going to be talking about, some of it, but in most cases, there's an imbalance of information. You start the practice of law, you don't understand the rules. Even people that are 10 or 15 years on don't understand what I'm going to talk about. People come over from foreign countries and try to get LLMs, and don't have any information. It's crazy to me. I don't understand why this information isn't widely known or taught. And maybe it's just because I have a special perspective. Maybe there's other people like me that know this information, but they don't teach it. But it's stuff that you need to know. And if you lack information about jobs, your prospects, where you're at, the health of your law firm, peers, decision makers, when you should move, when you shouldn't move, then you're going to be in much better shape. And just these few things alone, not understand the health of your firm and peers and decision makers and when to move, can make a profound difference in your career. And there's just in the law firm environment and in job searches, there's just people follow these career paths, not understanding the information that they need to succeed. I mean, your career, you should be spending, of course, a substantial amount of your time doing the work, but you also need to understand, is this the right way for me to be doing work? Is this the right environment for me to be doing work? And all these things just can really make a huge difference in your level of success. So you need the vital information that is required in order for you to succeed. And the ones that succeed, in my opinion, are the ones who understand this information. And it's just very strange because attorneys have all the information about what their clients should do, and they will sit down with clients and tell them about the law and their risk and all these things. But when they do the same thing with their career, they're clueless. I talk to almost every day. I talk to the partners that don't understand these rules and no one's educating them. I talk to associates that most of the time, it's interesting too, by the way, if you talk to an associate, they think they know everything. When you talk to a partner, they're just like, they realize they don't know everything. And that's often the sign of the best people when they're open to new information. The people that are often the oldest and the farthest down are the ones who want the information. The younger people don't, and law students even less. So, just thinking about that kind of dichotomy where an attorney understands their client's issues, but not their own. And, so if you're an attorney, you understand the weaknesses and strengths of the matters you work on, and you'll charge money to clients because you have all this information. But again, you often lack information about your own issues. So here's some of the biggest pieces of information that I think that's important for you to understand regarding your career. Now, the first one is that a lot of attorneys really think that they're in the right profession. And I would estimate that probably something about the neighborhood of 50% of all attorneys are not in the right profession. It could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, but if you're in the wrong profession, it's going to have all of these sorts of unintended consequences that are going to limit you. They're going to limit your life, and they're going to limit your career if you're in the wrong profession. I mean, if you're in the wrong profession, this could be you, or you could be in the wrong atmosphere. But if you're in the wrong profession, you're going to be unhappy. You're often going to be stressed. You're often going to make much less money than someone that is in the right profession. I mean, of course you will. You're going to be unfulfilled than if you were in a different profession. And so just think about your experience. Has your experience the past year? Has your experience the past 2 years or 3 years? Have you been unhappy? Has it stressed you out? Are you not doing as well as your peers that are doing well? Are you feeling unfulfilled and like you're not doing what you want? And this is real. I mean, if you feel these things, it could be because of the practice setting you're in. A law firm doesn't work for everyone. But if you are really someone that's in the right profession, you should get excited about the work at minimum. Maybe you're in a place where you don't like doing the work, but the work at a minimum should get you excited. You should get excited about solving clients' problems. This is what attorneys do. You should feel fulfilled when you write a good brief or you do a good transaction. It should bring something out from you. It should give you life. And work, when you're doing things that are in the right profession, that gives you meaning, and it makes you happy, and it makes you want to improve, and you do better than others, and you give more of yourself because work becomes play. And think about that. I mean, are you in the right profession? And a lot of times people aren't. And I'm certainly not going to lie to you and say that working in a huge law firm, for example, and billing, $2,500 plus per year is not going to make you unhappy or stressed or unfulfilled. But If the actual work appeals to you at some level, then that's actually good. And you probably should be an attorney. I mean, the attorneys are a lot of things, but one of the biggest things that attorneys are is they are people that are interested and get very, very excited about solving other people's problems. They sit down and they work and they come up with solutions for people's problems, and it gets them excited, and they get excited when they come up with a better solution than someone else. And this is what drives a lot of attorneys. I mean, that's what they need. They really want to do that. They want more responsibility to work on bigger things, and it makes them very excited. I had an interesting thing happen to me when I think it was a second year, maybe a third year law student. Actually, I was a third year law student, and I was taking this class with a professor that later went into the government, did all these great things. But his name was Peter Swire, and he went to Yale Law School and clerked on the Supreme Court and all these things. And I'd written my paper for him, and I'd gotten the highest grade in the class, and so I was doing really well there. And then I had a federal clerkship. I was on law review. I've been doing all these great things. And I was in his office one day, and we were kind of looking down at the library. And he said, you're going to have to figure out what you're going to want to do because you're not going to be practicing law. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, look at all these people compared to you. Like, you're just jumping around with a lot of enthusiasm, thinking about business and all these things. And there they are. And he had an office that kind of overlooked the law library, and everyone was kind of hunkered down and studying and very serious. And I'll never forget that when he said that, because I thought I was mad. I was like, you're crazy. And I told him that the professor that he said that, and he said, never should have said that to me, but he was absolutely right. He could tell that I didn't have that kind of natural drive to solve other people's problems the way you need to. And it's a different type of personality. There's lawyer personalities and there's non-lawyer personalities. And you may not have that. You may not be happy. I mean, you put an entrepreneur in a legal office, and eventually they're probably going to leave. I mean, that's just how it is. Or you put someone that can't sit still and wants to run around, do all sorts of other things, and that they may be in the wrong profession as well. So a lot of times people enter and remain in the legal market for the wrong reasons. So one of the reasons that people go into the legal market or become attorneys is because they think they're smart, and they think it's a good law degree, it's a good degree to have, and they should be practicing law. So you go to college, you get good grades, go to good college, you do well in the LSATs, you think that means you should be practicing law. And it's not that difficult if you have very good academics, and you do well on the LSAT, to get into a major law school and a law firm. None of these people are, when you get into law school or when you go to a law firm, none of them are really evaluating you based on whether or not it looks like you're going to be happy or a fit. They're just evaluating you because you've gotten the grades and the pedigree to get there. That's it. They're not evaluating you based on whether or not you're going to be happy or you're suited for it. I know people that that did very well on their SATs, and almost all those people, like I knew people when I was in college who got like 1580 and all these things, and all those people also did well in their LSATs, and they worked hard in college and they got into good law schools. And so these different tests, like the LSAT, is a kind of intelligent, standardized test for people that want to be attorneys, and it's actually a pretty good test. And why is it a good test? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it right now, because you may have done really well in the LSATs, or you may not have done that well. People that do well in the LSATs, typically people that do very, very well, typically do pretty well in their first year of law school. There's just the way of thinking of an attorney that makes them do well. They have the intellectual ability to spot issues, refine them into small things, very good reading skills, all these different sorts of things. And so if you didn't do well in the LSATs, it doesn't mean you can't be a good attorney, but it does mean that there may be, certain things that you may not necessarily want to be an attorney. You may not have the drive and all these sorts of things that are necessary to be a good attorney. And the LSAT, by the way, also doesn't test your interest or your ability to practice law. It tests you have the thinking skills, but it doesn't do that. Your grades in law school and college, they also don't test your ability to be a good attorney. Now, they do test one thing, and that's your motivation and your ability to study and get good grades. But and that motivation is obviously very important because as an attorney, you need to be motivated, but none of this stuff tests your ability to be a good attorney because just because you're smart and motivated to get good grades doesn't mean you're going to be a good attorney. Being an attorney is a completely different thing. And I would, stress to you that going to law school, taking the bar, where you're taking classes about constitutional law and contracts and everything, that has nothing to do with what it's like being in a law firm and working as an attorney. Absolutely, hardly anything to do with it. I mean, you only learn to be an attorney once you get inside of a law firm and start getting trained there. It takes about 5 years. You get some background on the practice of law when you're in law school, like how to maybe write a brief or moot court and things, but you don't. None of this is teaching you how to be a good attorney. It's not teaching you the skills that are necessary to be a good attorney. It's teaching you how to study, but it's not teaching you how to function in a law firm and do well there. So these are completely different things. I mean, which I'm sure if you need to practice attorney, you realize that you need to go someplace, you need to learn a practice area. It can take years. Usually takes about 5, but it's not going to show if you're a good attorney. And I do believe that if you want to be an attorney and you're in the right profession, you have to have some natural gifts for practicing law. If you don't have those, you're not in the right profession. Now, there are different types of gifts that attorneys have. So a personal injury attorney, their gifts are typically the ability to bring the cases. And then if they do go to trial, which they hardly ever do, 98% of the time, to be able to do trials. But if you don't have some natural gifts, like things that really motivate you, and you have some sort of skills, meaning you can see yourself doing better than others at different things, it's not something you should think about. You should have something that's natural within you that makes this the kind of thing that you want to do, and you should be good at it. I mean, and the only reason I'm saying this, and I'm kind of talking down to you right now, and I don't mean to do that, the only reason I'm saying how important it is to have these gifts and to really be able to do things is because if you're not going to be successful at something or ever really go as far as you could, is that the right decision for you? Now, for some people, getting a job in a law firm and doing the work and then doing it and finding other people to hire them to do the work may be the career choice you want. But is it the right career choice? I mean, could you do something much different if you were doing something else? Could you be more successful in another career if you were doing something else? And think about that. Are you looking at people that are in banking and thinking that sounds more exciting? Are you looking at people in other businesses and think that that looks exciting? Are you looking at things like teaching in a law school and that sounds more exciting? You need to, you need to keep in mind that you should be doing something where you have skills and you're going to be doing well. And one thing that I dislike seeing a lot of times is in every case where, whether it's criminal or it's litigation or whether it's transactional, you're going to be on the side of people that are very motivated, that are doing the best that they can and have these kind of gifts for this. And is that a good use of your skills if something else might be better? I mean, there's all sorts of other businesses and things you can do. So are you going to be in a place where you're going to be doing the best you can and be excited about it and continually motivated to do better? Are you? I mean, because you're also you're up against, in many practice areas, you're going to be up against people that are smarter than you, and you have to be able to kind of have those smarts with the ability to develop. I mean, you have to have these different types of abilities to be a good attorney. Just practicing law and working with clients, I mean, you need to have often the ability to see issues that other people do not, and to verbalize that and to document things well. And this is what it's about. I mean, it's about understanding how to be good at stuff and how to be better than others. It's very common, by the way, when big firms go up against small firms and different things, the big firms almost always win. And I'm not saying that in a rude way, but if you're in a litigation case and you're a very small firm and you're up against a huge firm, your odds of success are going to be very, very slim compared to because you're often going to be up against better people. So do you want to get better? And do you want to be of the type of person that wins things? Or do you want to be someone that kind of ends up getting pushed around and loses. I mean, you have to believe that you have the abilities to rise to that same level, to become a better attorney, and you have to want it. And this is very important. I mean, so you may not have the natural gifts, you can develop them, but you have to really, really want to, and you have to really, really want to become better and better. And you have to be committed to it, because if you're not committed to it and you're not doing the best you can, and you're not trying to learn, you're not trying to become smarter in your practice area, then it's going to create a lot of problems for you. Now, I want to just bring up a couple quick points, because what I'm saying right now may not sound like the nicest thing, and it's not meant to come across that way. What I'm saying right now is you have to have some sort of natural gift that you're bringing to the practice of law. Now, a natural gift does not mean being able to be a really good corporate attorney. A natural gift does not mean being able to be a really good whatever attorney in certain practice areas. So your gifts need to follow the practice area that you choose. I mean, personal injury, like I told you earlier, is about getting clients and then getting them the best settlements and going to trial and being exciting. And it's different. It does not require you to have incredible analytical ability. So that's where you can put your natural gift. Other practice areas like immigration and family law, it's sort of the same thing sometimes. I mean, you have to be okay in that practice area, and you have to be enthusiastic about it, and you have to be able to bring in clients and all these things. But you have to have some sort of natural gift that you're bringing to it. It doesn't need to be you need to be the smartest, but you need to figure out where you're gonna put that. And if you're going into a practice area where you're going to be up against very, very intelligent people that may be able to outthink you, then that's something to think about. And I don't mean that in a mean way. All I mean is that just put yourself in a situation where you decide to say you are just some sort of average student, and all of a sudden you wind up at MIT taking very complex physics classes or whatever it is. You probably are making a mistake. Like, it takes someone with 1,000 points in their SAT, and you put them at MIT, they're never going to succeed. It's impossible. So are you putting yourself in that sort of position in terms of your goals for your career? And you know how smart you are, you know where your interests are, but you have to realize that if you don't have those gifts and that strength in whatever practice area you're going into, that's going to cause problems for you. Now, none of this is to say that you can't be a very, very good attorney in a big firm, even if you don't have the intellectual firepower. There are all sorts of people in big firms that are in charge of bringing in business and don't necessarily do as well. But you have to understand that you have to have some sort of gift or motivation to do this. And working as an attorney is hard. I mean, you're working for other people. In most cases, your fees are set based on billable hours or doing transactions and things for a set fee. And is this where your best skills and your best you is going to come out? Is it really, if your goal is to make money, is it really where you're going to make the most money? Is it really where you're going to feel the most freedom? Is it really where you're going to make the best use of your God-given skills? And I can't answer that question for you. But what I can tell you is there's this guy on YouTube, and he goes around and he's got millions of followers. I forget what his name is, but he goes around, interviews, sees these people pulling out of $300,000 sports cars or walking out of very expensive stores with lots of bags. And he says, how did you get rich? And a lot of them say stupid things like, I started this app and I made tens of millions of dollars. I decided to start a website giving fitness advice and for $30 a month. And now I've got 100,000 subscribers, and it's just crazy. So there are so many ways that if you just want to make money or you do something you're interested in, like the fitness person, that you can have a very, very fulfilling career, making a lot more money with a lot more freedom if that's what you want to do. But if that doesn't appeal to you and this appeals to you, then you should do it. But you really need to ask yourself, is this the best thing for me? I mean, people are taught, and it's just kind of how the school system and everything works, but they're taught that you go to school, you do well, you get a job working for someone, you get paid a lot of money or as much as you can, you buy a house, start a family, and then you retire, and it's kind of like that. But is this profession for you? Is it something that's really going to make the best use of your God-given abilities? And I will tell you that I see attorneys all the time that go and do other things, and become epically successful. I know a guy that went to this fourth year law school, did horribly, was trying to scrape by being a personal injury attorney, wasn't doing well. And then he started some sort of online service for people to exchange ideas. And then he turned it into a subscription site. And now the company's like doing $100 million in revenue a year. I mean, it's crazy what you can do. You can take your passions and put it into something else and do very, very well if you don't like it. And all I would say to you is you have to be successful in this profession. If you really want to be successful, and success just doesn't mean money. Success means that you're engaged intellectually, you're engaged emotionally. Like you really, really like this. You have to be interested in it, and you have to have some sort of natural gifts for this, or your interest in it. Otherwise, you're going to be going up against people that do have those natural gifts or that natural interest. And if you don't have it, you're just going to get eaten alive by attorneys that do. And I just want you to be very, very clear at the outset that, is this something that fulfills you? Is this something you get excited about? And there's not a lot of point in doing this if you're not likely to succeed at it over the long run, or do as best as you possibly can at it. I mean, if you're not, and you don't see that sort of future for yourself, and you're not excited about your future, and you don't know how you're going to create a good future for yourself, then you should get out now. Now, I have all sorts of webinars and things that will talk to you about how to get business, or how to make good career decisions, and how to do all these different things. But none of that really matters if you're not interested in it and you don't really like it, because you're going to be competing against people that do like it, that are interested in it, and that's just not a good combination. You know, you as an attorney, like I told you earlier, you really have to have an interest in solving other people's problems. Now, there are different ways to do that, but deep down, what people are doing is they're coming to you for advice and help, and you have to want to solve their problems. Think about a doctor that wasn't interested in solving their patients' problems. Think about a doctor that was kind of thinking about other things. Thinking about a doctor that wasn't fully engaged. You wouldn't like that. And it's the same thing with clients. I mean, you have to get a client and you have to think like, wow, I can solve their problems. I know what I can do. This makes me very excited. And I could write about what makes a good attorney, but at its heart, it means you have to have a real interest in solving other people's problems. Most people are typically, if you're serving businesses, or you can serve individuals, so you could be an attorney that helps individuals with trust in estates, whatever, or you could be an attorney that helps companies, whoever you're helping. But your motivation really is helping others with problems. If you're working in a large firm or a mid-sized firm, you're typically hired by companies that have been started by people that were interested in starting companies, or your businesses that were where other people have started businesses and things. And those are people that are out there that are creating the work for you. So you should be the kind of person that wants to solve people's problems, instead of the kind of person that wants to hire attorneys to work for you. So are you the sort of person who wants to hire attorneys to work for you? And is that your dream? Or is your dream being the best as you can at solving other people's problems? Small companies, maybe in the beginning of your career, then larger companies later, and then the largest companies. Whatever it is, you have to want to solve other people's problems. You should be interested in doing as much research as you can in people's problems. You should be interested, if you're a corporate attorney or real estate, in documenting issues as well as you possibly can, finding little twerks and things that in contracts and making them better, and doing research and all these sorts of things that attorneys do to solve problems. This should motivate you. And I'll tell you right now, the best attorneys out there are the ones that are the most interested in solving other people's problems. The best attorneys that I've ever worked for, they'll do whatever they can to solve other people's problems. So do as much research as they can. They'll learn how to write better. They'll have associates when you're writing memos. Those are partners that are trying to solve problems and find angles. And all this stuff is what an attorney is about. And working in a law firm, if you want to do it as an attorney, you're going to have to be very interested in solving other people's problems. This is just what it is. And I'll tell you, I mean, a lot of attorneys could care less. Like, they're just like doing this work, and maybe they don't like the client, maybe it's not interesting to them, maybe they're just trying to fill hours, all this sort of thing. But the more motivated you are by solving other people's problems, the better attorney you're going to be. Who would you want to hire if you were looking for someone? Would you want to hire someone that wasn't motivated and interested in your problem and interested in their practice area? Or would you want to hire someone that wasn't interested in solving problems? It's interesting when you read the bios of attorneys online. Sometimes you'll see a bio that will say this person does this practice area and that's it. They get in their practice for 30 years. Other times you'll see a bio and you'll see all these associations and all these speaking engagements and all these papers and law review articles and everything the person's written. Well, the person that's doing all this writing and whatever and speaking on committees is obviously very, very interested in solving other people's problems, but the majority of attorneys aren't. So do you see yourself as someone that's going to be top in your practice area? Do you dream of being an expert in some aspect of your practice area? Do you want to write about it and talk about it? And do you want to really find new people whose problems you can solve? Because that's essentially what an attorney does. An attorney has to find problems that other people have, and it has to be motivated by solving them. And in addition, I'll just tell you another quick thing. The best attorneys that bill the most hours, that have to get the most work from clients, the clients just don't approach them with problems. They will find additional problems. So a corporate attorney may do a transaction, a merger, and then they'll come to the new company that they merge, and they'll say, let's document all this. Let's put in all this into place. Let's have our employment attorneys create new agreements, and they'll just find problems all the way, as many problems as they can. And your goal as an attorney, by the way, is to get work. Like, you always need to have work. So if you're a partner, you need to get more work out of your clients and get additional work. And then for other companies, and if you're an associate, you need to get more work from partners, and you need to show that you're motivated and doing a good job solving their clients' problems. And this is what it's all about. It's all about solving other people's problems. And if you're not, if you're happy, working in an office or part of the time, whatever it is, working behind a computer, sitting there for hours working on other people's problems, meeting clients to talk to them about their problems, going to meetings, coming up with solutions to problems, and happy doing this as an attorney, then, and you should get a charge and satisfaction from this, then you're in the right profession. Now, I like solving people's problems in recruiting, but not necessarily in the legal sphere. It's not something that gives me a real charge. I'll tell you when I first got a charge. So I started my career and I was working for a federal judge. Well, actually, I'll tell you two times. I started my career working as a summer associate in a big New York law firm. I thought when I got there that the best thing I could do would be to bill 8 hours a day and just kind of do this work that they gave me, and that was it. I had no parents that were attorneys. I had no understanding of the legal profession. I didn't learn this in law school. I was just told that I needed to show up, and I thought if I billed 8 hours a day, that was great. So I showed up at your law firm's getting later, 9:30 or so, work till 6, leave. And I did that for the first 5 weeks of my work as a summer associate. And I got into my first review, and it was not good. It was just all these attacks saying this, nothing's over yet. And I had no idea why they were saying these things to me. I had no idea that it was about hours and hours I was billing. I just thought they were telling me I did a bad job. And then there was another girl that went to, and everyone, by the way, all the summer associates were getting bad reviews. They were working 8 hours a day and so forth. So everyone got a bad review. But I asked around, there was one girl that went to law school with me, and the same law school, and she got a great review. And I said, I asked her, like, what is this, why do you think you got such a great review? And she said, well, there was a woman, another associate that I knew at the firm from college or whatever. And she told me that the only way to succeed is to bill as many hours as possible. So, I was billing 10, 12 hours a day, and they gave me a great review. So I did the same thing. My second half of the summer, I worked a ton of hours, and all of a sudden, like, it was just me and one other attorney got offers. So, but I worked a lot of hours, and that was what was required. And it's just, that was the rule. And so, you have to learn these rules as you're going through your career, and you have to be happy doing it. You have to really, really like it. And, and then I worked for a judge for a year as a federal district judge. And he used to get in at 9. So I got there at 8:30, and then he would leave at 5:30. So I'd leave at 6. And I kind of did that. Then I got to my first law firm, and everybody was working very hard, and I wasn't too happy. And I went to a second law firm, and I was working hard, and I wasn't too happy. But I still could not drag myself into work, you know, half hour before all the partners and things were. It wasn't interesting to me. And it wasn't until I started doing what I'm doing now that I found myself just completely in love with it. I would get up at 4:30 in the morning. I was just so excited to get started work. I mean, you never could have imagined in a million years that I would do that when I was in a law firm. I wouldn't drive downtown to the law firm at 4:30 in the morning, but I did that when I found a job that I liked. So you should get a charge. And I'm not saying you need to do this whatever you do, but you should get a real charge and a sense of satisfaction from the work you're doing. It should excite you. And if you see your career inside of a law firm, you need to be interested in this. You need to be interested in going out and trying to get business and learning about it and working these long hours. And it should excite you. And again, this may not be what you want to hear, but I'm telling you this because it's so important to really being in a profession that you love. And I am being really hardcore right now and telling you how difficult this is, but you have to be someone that just really likes this. You can't go into this profession and expect to succeed if you really don't like what you're doing. It's incredibly important. And you know, you may want to be more interested in another practicing, and that's okay. I mean, some people want to go in house because they want to work for one client. They think they can make more of a contribution. But you just have to understand that something about this profession needs to get you excited. And if it does, then you're in the right profession. And if you're not there right now and you want to give it some time, that's okay too. But you have to really love what you're doing. And if you find yourself interested in doing something else, then you probably belong in a different profession. And there's lots of professions that you can go in that are not the practice of law where you can go much farther. I mean, I've seen people become novelists and incredibly successful. I've seen all these people do all these different things that become very, very successful when if they continue practicing law, that never would have happened. So they go into these different professions and they find a lot of success doing other things. And I'm telling you, just because you have a law degree and you spend all that time doesn't mean you're going to not succeed. It was very funny when I was going away to law school. My grandmother, who knew I was very entrepreneurial and stuff, had me come over to her house, and she gave me a check or something, $1,000 to go to law school with. And so I went over to her house and picked up this check. And then at the time, she said to me something I thought was funny. She said, well, my father was a lawyer and his father was a lawyer, but they both went into, one ran a bank and one into politics. I mean, you can do all these things instead of working in a law firm and practicing law. So a lot of people go to law school and get all these degrees and become successful doing other things. And you can too. I mean, it's not just because think about politicians, whether it's Kamala Harris or Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton or the list, J.D. Vance, the list of people goes on and on. These are people that got law degrees and decided they want to do something else with their career. So it doesn't mean you have to work in a law firm. It just means you have to go somewhere where you're going to reach your full potential. And it's not going to happen if you're not extremely interested in practicing law. So just some other things. If you're practicing law and you care about, you require a lot of positive feedback and you care about what others think, that's a problem to some extent, because you're not going to get, in most law firms, not all, you're not going to get a lot of positive feedback. And they're going to give you enough maybe to keep you going, but you're not going to get a lot of positive feedback. And if you're not getting a lot of positive feedback, you're going to have to be okay with it. Law firms, especially like a lot of younger attorneys, they feel like they need to get a lot of positive feedback, but that just doesn't happen. I mean, if anything, your first couple of years, you're going to get a lot of negative feedback, and you're going to have to be okay with that. And not only that, but when you try to start switching jobs, you're going to not get a lot of positive feedback all the time. The market can be difficult, depending on your practice area, the location you're in, all these different things. So if you're not getting a lot of positive feedback, it's not something that it's the end of the world. I mean, attorneys do not get a lot of positive feedback. Even the best attorneys don't. And you have to have the confidence in yourself to continue when you're not getting that positive feedback. You need to realize that not getting positive feedback, even negative feedback, is something you can learn from, but you're going to have to be in a position where you're not completely dependent on getting positive feedback. I see attorneys, I know attorneys that people that work for me that dropped out of the practice of law because they felt horrible about themselves for losing some sort of case they were on, and they didn't think, they were a good attorney because they lost a case, or because they got fired. And then, you just need to be 100% committed, and you can't rely on positive feedback. It can take years before an attorney gets to the position where they're getting positive feedback, and it's just not something you need to worry about. I mean, if you're going to trial in a case, you're going to lose half the time with some of the things, and you need to be able to have your own compass, and not worry about positive feedback all the time. Your clients aren't always going to give you positive feedback. Your superiors aren't going to give you positive feedback. Your fellow attorneys are often competitive with you, and you're not going to get positive feedback from them. They'll try to undermine you. Judges aren't always going to give you the most positive feedback. And so there's just a lot of negativity in the legal profession. It's just how it works. You're arguing issues and trying to get the one up on people and so forth, but you're not always going to get a lot of positive feedback. So you need to be okay with that. You need to not let it affect you like it does a lot of people. And I'll tell you, I mean, it's very sad because so many attorneys drop out of the practice and they quit because they're not getting the kind of positive feedback that they really want and that they feel like they need. If you need that positive feedback to keep going forward, you require that, but you're not going to get it because you're not always going to get it. Even the best attorneys will not get a lot of positive feedback. Even when you become a partner, you're not going to get a lot of positive feedback. That's just how it works. That's how the profession works. It's not something, because there's always mistakes you can make. There's always things you're doing wrong, and you're never going to get the kind of feedback you need. I'm just telling you right now. And it's difficult. It's, people, when they're senior attorneys, they maybe worked in the profession, 2 or 3 firms for 30 years, and they'll list all the great things they've done and so forth on their resume, and it just won't move the needle. I mean, there are other things that people are looking at, and not having that sense of isolation and not feeling like you're doing well enough at all points in time can be stressful, and you're just not going to always get that positive feedback. And another thing, if you are receiving a lot of positive feedback and others aren't, well, that's kind of rare, and maybe you're in the right profession. But it's all about also the firm you're at. I mean, are you at a firm that's not paying you well, but in response, but they're giving you positive feedback to keep you around? Or are you in a firm that is paying you a lot? There's a lot of competition for your job, so they may not give you as much positive feedback. Are you working on the most complex matters where it's very, very difficult and it's hard to get positive feedback? And you're just not always going to get positive feedback. Even when you're an attorney that gets business and you're getting clients, the clients are going to be mad. They're mad about the bills, they're mad about the result. And so if you need to receive that, then it's a very, very difficult thing. I'm going to say this right now, and it's something that I remember. I was in my first year of law school. In my section, we had a class with our section. The teacher was this guy named Charlie Getz, and I was sitting there feeling really good about myself because I was in this top 10 law school, and I knew that if I just sit here and work, I would get a good job and I'd make a lot of money, and which was crazy because I had been in a business doing as an asphalt contractor where I could have made much more money just working in the summers because I was in Detroit where the business is seasonal than I would have as a first year attorney. But I thought, well, look at how much money partners at the time, top firms were paying over $1 million a year to the top partners. And I was like, this is a really good opportunity to make money and do really well. Well, I would just submit to you that, yes, you can make a lot of money working for attorneys, working as a law firm attorney. Yes, you can. But there's so many different variables, like, are you going to make partner or whatever it is? And even if you make partner, are they going to pay you enough? And all these different variables. And so if your goal is to make a lot of money, which for a lot of people it is, especially young attorneys, this is definitely, I would say, not the profession for you. I know a guy that sells and rents surfboards along the side of the road in my town in Malibu, California. He has 2 kids working for him, just kind of long-haired surfer type kids. He pays them $12 an hour, and they're literally just these kind of surfer types like Spicoli from Fast Time to Ridgemont High that are just kind of baked all the time, which I think would be kind of fun if I was working a job. But I mean, they're like so stoned and everything, they hardly, it's hard to understand them. But this guy lives in a multi-million-dollar house. He never finished high school. And the worst year he's had in the past 10 years, renting out these surfboards to all these tourists that come to Malibu. And LA is a huge city with lots of people coming in. It's $450,000. And he works a few hours a day. He just has these kids renting out these surfboards and makes sure that the surfboards are new and buys new ones when he needs to and pays the rent on a little shack where all this stuff is. Literally shack, not a big shack, but and he's managed to surf a few hours a day and has a great life. And this is something like stupid, like renting out surfboards. I know another guy that did something similar, but this guy really likes surfboards. He's really interested in the subject matter. He's the people that work for him, even though they're hard to understand, really understand surfing, and he loves it and promotes it with signs and things, and is interested in it. He makes a very good living, and that's why he succeeds. He succeeds because he's doing something that he really likes and making more money than most attorneys, working less time with a lot less stress. So there's lots of ways you can make money if you want to make money. They do not require you to practice law. They do not require you to sit in an office all day. They do not require you to have your work aggressively critiqued. They do not require you to do all these things that are very difficult when you're practicing law. And I'm just going to tell you, I mean, you do not need to be that smart or even that motivated to make a lot of things besides practicing law. I mean, I'm just amazed at these people that start these businesses that are just ridiculous in some cases, but they're interested in, that make money doing other things besides practicing law. I saw this. I'm in this organization called the Young Presidents Organization, which is for people that have, I think you have to have a business that does over $15 million a year or something, that has a payroll of 500,000 or 5 million. I don't know what it is, but anyway, I'm part of this organization, and I'm not president anymore, but I was president of it last year. And every time like new people come in, they want to be members, and they stand up. And this one guy, I remember several months ago, he stood up and he said that 3 years previously, he started this business selling supplements to women that would help them with their sex lives. I don't quite understand that, and staying young or something. And he'd grown it in 3 years from his kitchen table to a business generating over $100 million a year. I mean, this is the stuff that can happen. I mean, he's not even a woman. I mean, there's all these different things you can do with your career. If you want to make money, if you want to make money, you don't need to put on a suit each day or whatever to make money. You can do all sorts of different things. I mean, or dress up for work or have FaceTime, all these things. I mean, people think that they need to practice law to make a good living. And maybe that's you. I mean, maybe you've gone to school and you just really, really want to practice law. And if you do, you're going to be very, very good at it. But I just want to tell you that there's this whole other universe of things that people can do to make money. That's what your goal is, where you can be successful if you're really interested in something other than practicing law. So just don't do it for the money. That's crazy. And do it because it's something that you enjoy. I want to make another point too. This is just for younger attorneys or older attorneys, I don't know, but the time to not practice law and decide you don't want to practice law is when you're young. And the reason it is because when you get older, here's what happens. When you get older, you start doing things like buying homes. You start doing things like buying cars. You start doing things like having a family. You start doing all these things that make it impossible for you to do anything else but whatever this job is you have. So you find yourself at the age of 30 or 33 or whatever, not having any other options but to practice law. And you suddenly are handcuffed to this profession that's going to make it, because you have all these costs and things you need to pay, you become handcuffed to this profession that you may not like. It becomes very, very upsetting. I see these attorneys all the time, they're associates, and they was talking about men, they meet these women that are impressed with them and love them, and they get married, and then they buy a house, and then they have some children, and then they go on with their profession like 8 or 9 years, and then they have all these expenses and they keep getting bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden they realize they're not going to make partner or whatever. And then they can't find a job at another firm. And all of a sudden, their whole life and their house and everything is at risk. And it becomes just a complete meltdown. And they often get divorced and things. So it's just, if you want to start your own business, you really don't love this, you're not really committed, you need to do it. Start something else right away before it's too late. If you can't see yourself doing it, and that's how you want to make money. The next thing, if you're not in the right position, is if you're unsure of what you're doing. Now, there's an aptitude for practicing law, and it comes naturally for some people. Like for me, there was certain aspects of it I was very good at. I was very good at writing briefs, for example. But it takes a few years before you really kind of learn what you're doing. And it's not to say that that you should understand. I mean, a law firm is kind of like a boot camp, and you're learning these skills and you're learning how to do things a certain way. And it's not easy. I mean, the first couple of years in a law firm, a lot of people in large law firms will leave. They just get psyched out. But once you get through that, which is usually 2 or 3 years where you're learning your practice area. So I wanted to be very clear, and older attorneys watching this know this, but when you go into a firm early on in your career, you are being thrown all these different things that you may not understand, and you need to kind of get through it. And then you need to understand once you get through that, is this something that I truly enjoy, and can I see myself doing it? So you're a young attorney, you're being thrown all these different things. You don't know what's going on, but eventually you do. And then you have to ask yourself, is this really what I want to do? Because you're not going to, it doesn't make sense for the most part if you're still learning things and you are committed to learning. But after a few years, if you really don't know what you're doing, or you don't feel like if you really don't feel like there's purpose to what you're doing and you're unsure, then it would be a good idea for you to do something else if you can't see yourself doing this. Now, I want to make a couple quick points. You have to understand when you're deciding to do something else, is this because I don't like the environment that I'm in? Or is this because I just don't like the work? So there's a big difference. So you could be in a firm you don't like. You could be working with people you don't like. But if that were to change, would you be happy? And that's the question to ask yourself. If all that were to change, would you be happy? So that's why attorneys move firms. Attorneys move firms because they want to be in a different culture. They move firms because they want to be in a smaller firm. Maybe they want to be in a larger firm that challenges them more. But you have to believe that after a few years of what you're doing, that you can see yourself doing this for quite a while. I mean, you have to think, I really love this practice area. I really want to continue doing this. I really like the idea of solving other people's problems. I really can see myself growing and becoming an expert. You need to learn all those things. And I think that people that are continually unsure about practicing law, those are the people that often drop out and end up doing something different later on. They continually are unsure. I think some people, I had one guy, it was crazy. I was in my first year of law school, and the same professor that said you shouldn't do it for money, he said, everyone, like, if you're not 100% committed to this, you can't see yourself doing it, then you should be doing something else. And you should, and this guy literally, it was funny. I remember he was from UCLA, he come to the University of Virginia Law School. This guy literally got up and left the classroom, and no one ever heard from him again. That was very funny. And I don't think you can decide you don't want to practice law after your, 3 weeks in or whatever to your first semester. But that's what this guy did. Just absolutely incredible. But you need to really, after several years of it, maybe 1 or 2 or 3, you need to really believe you want to do it. And attorneys that are unsure about this drop out and end up doing something different later on. So you should never be unsure. When I joined this law firm, Dewey Valentine, they had kind of this annual ball at the Plaza Hotel in New York. And so they brought all this out from Los Angeles, and they met a bunch of people from the New York office that were just starting as well. And I sat down to drinks with 2 of them, and they were like, oh yeah, we're just gonna do this for a year or so until we go in-house. Completely uncommitted right when they went in, which is a sign of failure. You need to have a commitment. You need to be committed to it throughout your entire career, not just when you're starting. You can't be unsure. You have to be sure that this is what you want to do. You can't have this doubt. And if you have this doubt, you're gonna fail. Who can succeed if they have doubt? You have to have belief in what you can do. And then a lot of times, and this is a big one, and again, I'm not trying to psych you out, but this is a very, very important part of a presentation. But you should never be afraid to you should never remain in the legal profession because you're afraid of what other people think. How people will think that, oh, he's not an attorney, she's not an attorney anymore. People think that make this decision that they would never do anything else because their peers from law school would think differently. Or people they went to college with that thought it was a big deal that they became attorneys. I mean, people from that they know socially, they hold themselves high as being attorneys, and so or their parents, they don't want to disappoint their parents that help them go to law school, and so they stay practicing law. This sort of groupthink mentality of these attorneys, it makes them extremely unhappy. They think what other people they care about what other people think, so they stay employed in these jobs that they hate. It's just absolutely crazy. And this is very, very common. And I bring this up just because so many people do this, and so many people hurt their futures by having this groupthink mentality, and it makes them very, very unhappy. You should never do something and continue doing something if you're not more satisfied, or if you care about what other people think, and you can't think what other people think. It's your life. If you're 10 years in, you worry what other people think, or you're 1 month or two, 1 year, or 2 years, or 3 years, and you care what other people think. That's just you need to care about what you think because it's your life. And if you don't think that way, if you care about what other people think, you don't have goals, then about staying in your profession and doing what you want to do, and you care about what the people think, and you stay in it for the wrong reasons, you're going to be unhappy. This is, by the way, I'm bringing all this up because I've seen so many wasted careers and lives by people continuing to do what the other people think they should do, or not wanting disappointing their parents or their spouse, or looking bad to others. And it's just absolutely crazy because, when you get older, when you're, I guess when you get to your 40s and 50s and maybe later, you're never going to worry about what other people think about you anymore. This type of ego-centered worrying about how you look to other people is very, very common for young competitive people. But how you look to others should not motivate your decision to stay practicing law. Your happiness, your health, all these things really need to take precedence. So here's another mistake that people make. They think that they should take the job that pays the most money. This is what almost all attorneys do. It's one of the most significant mistakes they make because they gravitate towards positions that pay the most money. Now, let me just say one point here right away. And this applies to lateral attorneys, it applies to law students, and all sorts of things, is that people just go to the jobs that pay them the most money. Here's a little bit of piece of information that I wanted to make you aware of. If you go to the firms that pay the most money, essentially what you're doing, because your odds of making partner there are very, very slim, you're front loading your compensation earlier in your career. So yeah, you can make $500,000 as an associate there, but good luck making that much money later in your career, because you're probably not going to make partner if you're not really in it for the long haul. And so you've front loaded all of your compensation for high income earlier in your career, and then ultimately a lower income later in your career, and you'll have to start from ground zero, learn how to get clients and all that sort of thing. So people always try to take the jobs that pay the most money. Now, I am not by any stretch of the imagination saying if you start off your career at a big firm, it's not going to help you, because it will make you a better attorney. It will expose you, let you to go more in depth into problems and all sorts of things. But at some point in your career, you may take a position where you take it for money as opposed to what you really want. And it can really sabotage your career in a big way. So you go to a firm where you have no future, but they pay a lot of money. And then you just become extremely dissatisfied with the practice of law because you've had a bad experience, and you may drop out of the practice of law. You may go in-house. You're more suited for a law firm and other things. So when you're going to work for a law firm, you really need to sometimes think about who pays the most money. I'll never forget this thing that happened with a guy that I knew pretty well. And I was working to help him place him. And I found a firm for him that was absolutely perfect for him. It was a Federalist Society, all these people that were in the Federalist Society. It was just kind of this rare firm. And people were just like him, and he completely clicked with them. They loved him. It was a smaller firm with partnership prospects, but they didn't pay as much. And the firm is in San Francisco, and there's very few firms that are composed of conservatives in San Francisco. And it was a great place for him. They did the kind of litigation he wanted to. They did all these things. But then he got an offer through his friend from this firm called, I think it was Wild Gotchel, or it maybe not be Wild. I don't want to say that by any firm. Wild Gotchel is a great firm, but he got a job at one of these really big firms in New York, and he was in California. And he was like, wow, they pay 30% or 40% more. I'm going to take this firm job. Well, he went there and he worked for 2 years, was working like 2,800 hours a year, like stumbling out of work late at night, and eventually just was like, I quit and left and didn't know what he was going to do, and became a contract attorney, where if he'd stayed at went to this firm, was lateraling, where he would have had a better fit, he would have been happy. But he decided on the money, which is so many people do, and they take the money, and then it may not be the right decision for them. So, the firms that pay the most money, just so you know, are going to be the most demanding. They're going to be very, very difficult. You're not going to get a lot of feedback. You're probably not going to have the chance for a lot of opportunity. And it's very hard to have long-term success. Now, if you are all in, which I'm suggesting you be, if you really like what you're going to do, then you can become a partner at almost any firm in the country. Maybe not Cravath or a couple of others, but you can become very, very successful. But you have to realize that you can't judge your career or run your career based on money. So the jobs that pay the most money, again, you're front loading your compensation, meaning you're going to work hard, you're going to be expected to leave. You actually get very, very good training, become exceptional attorney, but now you're going to be expected to leave at some point, and they're going to pay they often pay the most because the partners have the highest performance expectations, have the largest clients, and the partners, need to have the best people working for them. But there's also like an up and out thing that goes with it. So, it's just kind of how it works. The whole idea to the way that this kind of this big firm started. I don't want to give you a ton of history here, but Cravath, I believe it was in late 1950s, early 60s, or something like that, had this kind of thing happening where they didn't have a lot of opportunity to partner, but they wanted to get the very, very best people working on their matters. So at the time, I think they paid $25,000 a year, when other law firms and things were paying like 12 or 15. And so they got all the best attorneys from Harvard and all these places to go to work for them. But there was always often this thing that happened where they knew they weren't going to make partner, but after working all those years, they would put them in house with their clients like IBM and things, and they would go there. And this is kind of how the whole model of the big firm developed. And so, when you go to a big firm like that, there are issues for advancement. You're going to have the less likelihood of advance, but you're also going to have the greatest chance of success if you're able to advance there. And these firms, by the way, they pay the most because they want the best mind, but they also are paying because they're risky. They're much more risky that you can lose your job than they are in a lot of other firms. And so the more the job pays, often the riskier it is. Now, again, I'm not criticizing large law firms because they are awesome. They will give you training and ways of seeing issues, exposure to clients that you'll never get at a smaller firm. But the idea is that people go into those jobs with a lot of confidence, think, well, of course I'll make partner. Well, I was done really, really well. But then they come up against all these very, very difficult standards and things, and it becomes very difficult. And if you take the highest paying jobs, you're more likely to get discouraged, more likely to drop out of the practice of law, you're less likely to develop clients. And if you take the lower paying ones, and attorneys, often don't think it will happen to them, but it does. And I see it all the time. These incredibly talented people that just kind of have their, confidence, to do well. And and again, you may be one of these attorneys in a highly paid environment right now and worried. Large law firms are like companies. Anytime the revenue slips at a company, they go and they lay people off. And it's the same thing with the law firm. You could You could have gone to the best law school in the world, taken a job at the best law firm. If work slows down, you lose your job. And there's an example. I've written about this and I've talked about this lots and lots of times, but I'll talk about it again. I was clerking when I was a young attorney, and I always talk about this example, but I think maybe the more times I talk about it, the more it'll seep in. So I was clerking in Bay City, Michigan, which is next to Midland, Michigan, which is kind of where Dow Chemical is. So there's some companies there and some attorneys. And then there's some other kind of surrounding areas, not too far from Flint, but it doesn't matter. So when I was clerking, there was kind of this group of young attorneys, meaning people that were associates and things and clerks. And I remember, there were people at these firms, there weren't a lot of them, maybe 4 or 5 firms, that had gone to great law schools like Michigan and other places. And one went to Duke, and they were practicing, and they'd come home. They were from this area, so they were practicing at some of these smaller firms. And when I say smaller firms, maybe 15 attorneys, 20, some 10 attorneys, whatever, smaller firms. But these are people that certainly could have practiced at larger law firms. And so, I clerked there for a year and I kind of forgot about all these people. But then I was like, I want to look some of them up. I was just kind of bored one day. And I looked them up, and to my astonishment, it was just absolutely crazy. Not only were there partners at these firms, but almost all these people that I had met when I was young, that were young attorneys in these firms, were still practicing law still at these firms. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, we're talking about like 20 years later, they're all still practicing law at these firms. And meanwhile, people I went to law school with, or the people that I practice law with in big firms, just all over the map, or just doing all these different things, and it bounced around between firms, and often were unhappy. Some of them died. I mean, it's just probably from stress. Not a lot of them, 2 that I can remember. But the point is that it depends on the environment you're in. Making the most money is not always the most important thing. But if you're working many times at a smaller firm or in a smaller market, it's just much different. And you may taking the most money up front may hurt you. And I think back to these attorneys in this kind of smaller market, like they may not have made like these top of market salaries when they got out of law school, probably nowhere near it. But think about their income probably slowly rose over the years when they became a partner and so forth. But the idea is that they probably made a lot more money by working in these small firms and staying employed all this time, and also happier than they would have made had they decided to join a large law firm and then get dealt with all that stress and discouraged. So I just want you to think about the money, and is it really the most important thing to you? Often it's what you enjoy doing, or where you see more of a future. Another guy in my YPO group, very smart guy, Harvard Law School, I think one of the youngest graduates of their history. He went to work at a big law firm in Los Angeles on Albany, and he was there for like 2 years, and he realized that in order for him to succeed there, he would need to bring in these large, huge multinational clients if he wanted to ever make partner. And he's like, this is crazy. Like, how am I going to do that? And he decided someone he knew was opening up a personal injury law firm. And this guy obviously had the credentials to work at any major firm. This guy was opening up a personal injury law firm, and he said, you know what, there's a lot more potential doing that. And I will give up the pay for doing something else that seems fun. Now he's got 50 plus attorneys working for him. It's a large firm. So the other thing that you need to understand too is, in terms of your career success, is whether or not you're in the right practice area. So many times you may join a firm and be in the completely wrong practice area, and that may make you very unhappy. So one of the biggest mistakes that attorneys make, and this is one you may have made that you should think about, is joining, like being in a transactional practice area when you may be more suited for litigation, employment, and so forth. So I remember when I was at a big firm in New York, they were a big corporate firm. At the end of the summer, they said, what practice area do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I love litigation. And they were like, not corporate? And I said, no, I really like litigation. And said, are you sure? Not corporate. And what they were saying basically was, if you don't choose corporate, that's not good, because we're a corporate law firm. So they were steering me towards doing corporate, when I like to read and argue and talk and do these kind of presentations, and that's my skill. But had I done that, I probably would have been very, very unhappy, because there's different types of attorneys. Like, I just want you to kind of understand this from a from just the practicalities of it. So if you're someone that enjoyed English and history and writing and political science and talking in class about those sorts of things, that's one type of person. And if you've always been gravitated towards those sorts of things and got really great grades in English, or maybe you're the type of person who likes math and science, and you really gravitate towards that and like that, and that kind of stuff appeals to you, and you've always had a natural bent for it. Well, people that are really good at English and that sort of thing really belong in litigation. That's what they do. But they often will get steered into transactional practice areas like real estate. If you're really good at math and science and you like that, you're often much better off doing things like corporate or real estate or other transactional practice areas. So you have to be in the right practice area, and you often don't realize that. And the legal profession is very competitive. You need to do something that piques your interest, that makes you really interested, and that you think about and you want to do. And so you need to be in the practice area that matches, that appeals to you, that gets you fired up and excited. And if you're in the wrong practice area, that's very, very bad, because corporate real estate, and to me, would be very, very dry. It's not something that would get me excited. But for other attorneys, that's exactly what they want to do. That appeals to them. They love the idea of helping a company solve their problems and document things, or making sure a real estate transaction goes through, where someone that might be more suited to litigation doesn't. So if you're in the wrong practice area, then you're often not going to be very happy practicing law. That doesn't mean you can't practice law. It means you have to find yourself in the right practice area. Now, attorneys come to me all the time and they say things like, "Oh, I'm doing litigation, but I really want to do environmental," and something like that, or I'm in litigation, I really want to do employment. Well, if you go into a practice area that kind of matches the reading and writing aspect of it, that's great. That's very, very closely related. But you need to try to be in a practice area that is matching your skill set and your interest, and makes the best of your skills. You can't do something that's not making the best use of your skills. I come back to this example. So someone really, really good in English, history, and things somehow ends up at Caltech and is forced to take all these incredibly difficult science classes, and maybe they're smart, but are science and math classes, but it's absolutely their worst nightmare. So that's not their skill set. So you need to do something that's in your skill set, and you need to understand whether or not you're in the right practice area. Now, switching practice areas is not easy. It's a whole separate, probably webinar done. It's a whole separate discussion, but you need to understand if you're in the right practice area. And if you're in the wrong practice area, then you're not going to be happy. And so, how do you assess what practice area you should be in? Sometimes people will say, "Oh, I want to do environmental," because they're interested in the environment. But they say, "I want to do intellectual property law because I want to do IP or something." And they come up with all these reasons that they want to do a practice area, just based on the general subject matter. Like, "Oh, I'm really interested in doing appellate work or something." And it's very difficult to decide what practice area you should be in and whether or not the practice area matches you. But again, I'm going to give this example. By the time you're in first or second grade, you typically will be really good or enjoy reading, writing, history, and so forth. Maybe you're the kind of person who likes reading books, writing essays about them, being part of book clubs or whatever. Maybe you love science and math competitions, which a lot of people do. I knew this kind of aside, but the dean at the University of Virginia Law School came to visit me a long time ago, and he was a smart guy. He worked at Sullivan and Cromwell, but his son was taking these in math camp at Caltech in the summer, and working on all those math and getting better at it. This kind of stuff that math people do. So you have to understand what practice area that is going to fit you, and you have to just really understand if should be in a transactional practice area, non-transactional practice area. And as far as I'm concerned, most attorneys in transactional practice areas can pick up on other related transactional practice areas. Corporate M&A, you can pick up on securities. If you're, same thing with non-transaction. If you're in employment, you can pick up litigation, but you need to understand what practice area you're in, whether or not it gets you excited. And so, these are all things that I've already talked about, but knowing that you're in the right type of practice area. Does your practice area allow you to have a lot of contact with people? And is that important to you? Does your practice area, is it very dry and you don't have contact with people? What is it that gets you excited? And so just being in the right practice area really matters a lot. And you need to do whatever really kind of gets you excited if you're going to be successful in your practice area. And if you're in the wrong practice area, you may mistakenly conclude that you don't like practicing law because you're just not doing the kind of work that gets you excited. So oftentimes, all people need to do to start enjoying practicing law is to get in the right practice area. It's as simple as that. This is another huge mistake that attorneys make, and this is extremely common among lots and lots of attorneys, is resting on their past laurels. Meaning, a lot of times it's very common for new attorneys. They think, well, I went, I did really well in college, I went to this great college, I went to this great law school, I did well, or I worked at a big firm when I got out of school, and they think that that entitles them to not have to work as hard, to make money, to do all these things, and to look down at people with lesser qualifications. And they believe that any law firm finds someone with their skills is really lucky to have them. And not only that, but they've got the best qualifications of the people that they're working with, even better than the partners, and they should be coddled and rewarded based on their past achievements. Now, this is a very, very important one, and it's something that so many attorneys make this mistake. They may make this mistake when they're young. Many do, and they get blown out of the water. They may make it when they're older, but you really can never rely on your past laurels. It's found in older attorneys, but it's found in a lot of younger attorneys as well. So, a law firm, an employer may respect where you went, and that's why you got hired, but it's not going to give you a free pass for very long. It will get you in the door, but it's certainly not going to have anything to do with how well you do in the practice of law. I mean, you need to be committed. You need to do good work, bill more hours, understand political games, and make a series of very, very good decisions throughout your career to succeed. So, who would I respect if I went into a large law firm? Maybe there's some guy that went to a fourth-tier law school, but has been there for 20 years and is a partner and I have much better qualifications than him. Well, he's someone that you should hold on a very high pedestal because he's figured out how to succeed. And he's done it with his educational credentials, and they really don't matter. I mean, just because you have good qualifications, doesn't mean you're going to get blown out of the water if you start flying those around. People don't like that. And again, any previous achievements that you've had that have gotten you into a law firm are nothing. I mean, you still have to play the game. So, imagine that, a professional football player believed that he needed to have special treatment because he got drafted into a team from a well-regarded football team, for example. I mean, he would, the professional athlete, once he makes it there, he needs to start trying harder than ever before. He's upped his game. He's with better players. So he cannot rest on his past laurels. He's got to believe that he can compete at this higher level. And so, when you get into a law firm, you need to continually prove yourself. Every time. I mean, every attorney does. It's very, very important. So you need to really understand that whatever you've done in the past is meaningless. The only thing the law firm cares about is what you're doing now. Older attorneys sometimes will come to me and they'll say, well, I had this $10 million book of business at one point in my career. I believe I could build it up. Now I only have, 500,000, but a law firm should realize what I can do and all these things. No one cares. They only care about where you're at, the competition right now. And a lot of attorneys, when they come out of law school, think they're great. And they go into these law firms, and sometimes even law firms beneath them, and they think that they're going to do well just because of their laurels, and they get blown out of the water. I remember an attorney I know pretty well, and he went to a great law school, but didn't do well in on-campus interviewing. There's great first-year grades. I don't know what it was, and got a position at this kind of firm that wasn't as good as everyone coming out of in his law school, like not that well-regarded firm. I mean, a good firm, like a national firm, but not like one that you think, wow, this is one of the top firms in the country in this. So he got a position, and then he got there and he thought, well, I went to this great law school. All these people there didn't go as good at law school as I did, and he just didn't put his heart and soul into the work, and he got blown out of the water, and they let it go. And this is what happens. I mean, they didn't give him an offer at the end of the summer. He was crushed, and then anyway. You have to always do the best you can wherever you're at, and not rest on your laurels. Here's another one that people think. They think if they bill enough hours, they're going to succeed. So people will go into law firms and they'll say, okay, I bill my 2,000 hours, I'm done. And so, obviously law firms want you to bill a lot of hours because the more you bill, the more the law firm makes. And so law firms, of course, give the attorneys working there the belief if they bill enough hours, they're going to succeed. Like just keep billing and billing, and then if you bill enough hours, you're going to become a income partner, a partner, and you keep just keep billing hours and just keep doing that. And so billing a lot of hours is a myth. I mean, it's how law firms make money, and so they're expected, but just because you bill a lot of hours doesn't mean you're going to succeed. Other factors come into play. You could go into a large law firm with no partnership prospects and bill as many hours as you possibly could, and it doesn't mean you're going to succeed. I mean, you have to be in a position where you have to be able to bill hours and realizing that maybe there's nothing at the end of the rainbow, and it's just how it is. And so you could bill all these hours and you're not going to succeed. Now, what does that mean? It means that often in large law firms, just kind of throw this out there, any law firm, the people that bill the most hours are the most valuable. They're not valuable just because they're billing the hours. Getting all this work shows value because people are giving you work to do, repeat work. And again, when you're an associate, the law firm is your client, and the partners you're working for are your clients. So your job is to get as much work with them. But often, these contributions aren't rewarded. There may not be the municipal partnership there. There may be. I was talking to a partner, an income partner, at a major, one of the top 10 best firms in the country, I think, yesterday, Tuesday, and he was saying that the firm basically told him that we have no more equity spots. It's not going to happen. If you want to try to get your work over $5 million a year, it could happen, but the odds of it happening are pretty slim. And so even though he'd been there for 15 years, billing all these hours, there was really not going to be the kind of reward he wanted, at the end. So succeeding in a large law firm is more about it's just hours. It's about a lot more things than your ability to bill hours, and it's just not a good metric. It's not something that you can count on is giving you long-term career, long-term career. I mean, you can go into a law firm and they might have a bunch of work and you bill a lot of hours, but your hours will decline if they lose that work, and then you will lose your job. It's just how it is. And so you just can't believe that you're going to be successful just by billing a lot of hours. Now, it can work. More important than hours are things like business, like your ability to generate business or learn how to do it earlier in your career, having mentors that will get behind you, and sponsoring. What does that mean? So it means that in order for you to succeed and become a partner in a law firm, or to stay a partner in a great law firm, you're typically going to need mentors and sponsors. So when someone comes up for partnership, you want someone to speak up for you that has a lot of business and pull within the firm and say, I want this person to be a partner. That goes a long way. If you have a mentor that's kind of helping you make the right decisions and navigate things, that can help. Just the hours alone aren't going to get you very far. They'll get you somewhere, but they're not gonna make it. And it's scary. I mean, let me tell you why it's scary. It's scary because when you go to a law firm and you're young, especially, your goal is to build as many hours as you can. You dedicate years or a decade of your life to doing this, but there's so much things that are so much more important than that that many attorneys don't learn. They don't learn that their long-term success means they're going to need business. They don't learn that they need to get the work from the right people that are going to be able to advance their career. They don't learn all this. And I'm just trying to tell you right now that there's a lot more than hours. And so a lot of people also think that they're going to succeed if they get on all these committees. So they want to be on different committees, associate committees, all these different committees. And what happens kind of in law firms is kind of interesting. You have what are called your minders, grinders, and binders. So a minder is someone that kind of watches over everyone doing the work and manages things. Your binder is someone that goes out and gets work. And then your grinder is someone that does work. So a lot of partners, when they don't have business, well, just tell you how it works. It's kind of interesting, I guess. A lot of partners, when they don't have business, will try to get on all these committees and these management committees and kind of insulate themselves within the firm, and they think that will make them succeed. This is what a lot of partners without business do. They try to get on all these committees and different things, and they think that being in charge of the summer associates or different things will help them. But most of that work, I'm just telling you right now, if you aspire to it, that may help to some extent. But really what it comes down to is business, mentors, hours. Like, so these committees often don't work. All sorts of partners try to get on some of these committees when they don't have business. Some of them have business, but for the most part, the people that have a lot of business, clients are spending their time doing that. And a lot of times, best partners, the partners that are on these committees, are they may be in charge of compensation, and they're often the ones without a lot of business. And not always, not even probably 50% of the time, but a lot of these committees are attracting people in management roles that are making the least financial contribution to the firm and trying to show their value that way. It can work, but I'm just telling you that the line and things like that is not going to help you with why, if you're an associate, like why would you be spending all your time in these committees when your value is the hours that you're billing. I had a funny thing happen when I was at this guy was in charge of the pro bono committee. And so he got up in front of a group of all these new associates and said, we have the lowest pro bono participation of any firm. We're not committed to it, but we need to do more and all this sort of thing. And that guy just got ran out of the firm. I mean, this firm was actually summer associate and so fast. I mean, I saw it happen almost in real time because this is not something, law firms, of course, do value pro bono. I'm just not saying that's not the case, but at the same time, the real value is hours and things trying to get business. That's what pays the bills. So you have to think, what's paying the bills. And so just worried about trying to be part of these committees, about whatever your associate or partner, the people that are valued. I just want to tell you your value. Your value in a law firm is not being on committees, different things, or even aspiring to management roles. Your value is doing the best work, billing lots of hours, and having important people sponsoring them. I run into attorneys all the time that may have been at a firm and been there several years. And they're like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Like I would like to be in charge of. I would like to be a recruiting director. I would like to be some other role in the firm, whatever. But they get into these roles, and those roles they become cost centers. What does that mean? So you have to worry about becoming a cost center as opposed to a profit generator. So people that make money for a firm are always going to be more valued than people that are taking. So when law firms look to cut people, they always start first with people that are cost centers. So I've seen, during 2008 and other times, I saw all these law firms let go people in the recruiting departments trying to save money wherever they could, or and attorneys that had worked there that had started at the firm and then transitioned over there. So always think about, are you going to be cost center, or are you going to be something that drains resources? So the idea of this guy with the pro bono committee was he was trying to say, we're not doing enough. We're going to take all these new, summer associates and other people, and we want to make them into pro bono machines. Well, that's actually not something that the law firm was that interested in hearing, obviously, because that takes away from them making money. So I want you to understand that going into a law firm, and even if you are in a law firm, and holding yourself out as someone that can do things that are unrelated to making partner or being a good partner is very, very dangerous. It's law firms value committees, but you just can't hide behind the core fundamentals of the committee, which means that you're not helping the firm generate revenue. When I was in my first year of recruiting, I was working in downtown Los Angeles in this office and rented. And I remember late at night, not late, but like 6 or something, this partner from a law firm came in, and he didn't have any business. He was worried about getting his next job and what he was going to do. And he kept bragging to me and saying, well, I'm a really good mentor to associates, and I'm in charge of this committee for new associates and everything. And he thought that was his value, but ultimately he lost his job and had a very, very difficult time in his career because that wasn't meaningful to the law firm. I mean, that he tried to put his value behind that, when his real value should have been spending that time when he was doing that stuff, making the law firm money. So one of the things, this is another major career mistake that people make, and this is one of the biggest career mistakes that I see that really kind of messes people up. People will believe that when they're looking for a new position for whatever reason, maybe they're employed and looking for a new position, maybe they're currently unemployed and looking for a position, they think that it's bad to approach a lot of law firms. Now, if you are on this webinar and you've been on my webinars before, I'll talk a lot about this next week as well. People believe that the worst thing that they can do when they're trying to get a job is to apply to a lot of law firms. They think that they need to be very, very selective, and they need to make sure they're only applying to the right law firms or ones that, that they select that have a certain reputation. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Every law firm is different. Every law firm is going to have a need for you at different points in time. Different law firms will like people with their background. Whatever your background is, it could be white, black, Spanish, Republican, whatever. Democrat, whatever your background is, top law school and not top law school. Every law firms have different preferences. The racial idea that I just gave is probably not a good one, but I'll say one example would be I've seen law firms that have almost all college athletes in them. Very, very strange. But, if you were a college athlete applying there, not even knowing that, all of a sudden this law firm is like salivating for you. Or maybe you're a far right Republican. You find a firm that does that, and all of a sudden they're salivating for you. Or maybe you're a woman and you apply to a firm and it's all women. And they're like, there's all these things that happen. I went into one law firm when I first came out to Los Angeles, and I was interviewing firms, and I interviewed with this very, very good firm. It's no longer in existence. It's called Heller Ehrman. It actually went out of business. It was in the 1800s. It went out of business when two huge cases that they had 100 plus people working on settled sudden, and they had no money coming in to pay their lines of credit and all these things, and they exploded. So law firms are risky. But I went into this law firm, and it was a small office in Los Angeles, a San Francisco law firm. And I went in there, and I'm not, and again, I don't want to offend anybody or anything. I'm not saying this in a positive or negative way, but I'm not anyway. But almost all the associates were gay, and that's great. But I'm just saying that was the type of person that they attracted, and that they wanted to work there. And again, I'm not criticizing this in any way. I'm just saying that different law firms will hire and gravitate towards different types of people, and you often don't know that until you apply. And so, I knew one attorney that was unemployed for several years. I often have to talk people into this, and they won't do it. But I knew a guy that was having a difficult time finding a position, and he'd been unemployed because he was having a health problem. And he gave me the authorization. I had to talk him into it, but he had nothing to lose, to help market him all over the country. And I work very hard for my candidates. So I encourage you to talk to recruiting firms, things if you're looking for a job. I don't even think they're competitive, I honestly, but they will tell you about one or two jobs or maybe a few. But this particular guy had worked no more than 5 years in a law firm, and he was currently working as an editor, getting paid low hourly rate. I don't know what it was, $30 an hour or something. And he ended up getting a very interesting case. He got a job, hadn't worked in like 5 years, and he'd been an editor, getting paid an hourly wage. It wasn't that much money. I believe he was in Texas and just not doing well. He had a health problem that he'd worked at a big law firm, and then his health problem made it impossible for him to work. He was just kind of like devastated. And I got him an interview at this firm. It was absolutely incredible. He went to interview there, and the offices were kind of beaten down and things. He was from Texas. This law firm was in Orange County, California. And the law firm was like, he went in there and then he left. It's like, wow, that didn't seem like a great law firm. And offices were run down. And then so the partner that interviewed him, he'd come out like on a Friday and then done some stuff with them on a Saturday or something. But the partner, there was a one partner firm, and the partner that interviewed him said that he called me and was like, well, he likes your firm, but he's kind of a little bit worried about whether or not you can afford to pay him, and what are we to pay? And he said, oh, because your office. And so he said, oh, we have these offices like that because we don't want our clients to think we're making a lot of money from them. We want to think that we're really lean and mean and stuff. And I said, well, how much would she make? And he said, well, her billing rate would be $500 an hour, real estate, and she would get to keep half of that. And I was like, wait a minute. So if she works 2,000 hours a year, she can make $500,000 a year. And he said, yeah. And I said, do you have enough work for her to do that? He said, I have more than 2,000 hours worth of work. So I called this woman, and I, she was an editor, and she's like, I'm happy being an editor, making $30 an hour. And I told her about this, and she couldn't believe it. I mean, she's like, is this really true? And this was years ago. This was over a decade ago. And every year, I mean, she sends me Christmas cards and nice notes, and because she got this incredible opportunity where she never would have gotten had she not given me the authorization to do this. I mean, just incredible things can happen, and so you can imagine the things that can happen when you market yourself to enough places. Miracles can happen, and they happen all the time when I let people, when people are marketed that way. And I remember that, when my clerkship ended, I applied to many law firms. I went into Martindale and I just sent a bunch of them letters. And I found one law firm, Quinn Emanuel, that wasn't well known. It's a small firm at the time, like 40 attorneys, and very small. Wasn't like the kind of firms that I was applying to, like Latham and O'Melveny and everything. But just because I applied there and they were kind of off the radar, I got a job, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life working. So, I never would have landed this unless I decided I was going to mail my resume to a ton of places. And I learned the value of this early on in my career. I learned it later when I started a company called Legal Authority. There was a huge legal recession that happened starting basically in October 2000, and it lasted for a long time. And there was no jobs in the market. And this particular point in time, here we are in early October, this is going to turn into, I believe, Armageddon of a legal market. It's just there's too much bad stuff going on in the economy. I'm certainly not an economist. I'm not. I don't, don't know about these things. But what I do know is that I think this is a bad market because there's not as many interviews and stuff coming in. So I know that. But what I do know is that this company in Legal Authority was started. It would basically, you would call up and you would say, I want to get a litigation job in wherever, Chicago. So we'd say, okay, well, we have 1,000 law firms in Chicago that have litigation practices, and this is the size of them and so forth. And people would apply to 300 or something and get jobs when they'd been sitting there. And back then it was like Monster and all these career builder trying to get jobs, and nothing happened. So, applying to a lot of firms works and can create incredible results, and they don't have to have job openings. And there's 30,000 plus law firms in the United States. And so you're going to experience a lot of success when you allow yourself to approach a lot of firms. You can do it through me. You can do it on your own. I have companies, I think it's called BCG Premier or something, that help individuals apply to firms. But you're going to have a lot of success when you're able to apply to a lot of places that other people aren't applying to. If you apply to jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed and that sort of thing, you're putting yourself in competition with every single attorney that's also accessing those jobs. And if you're the best candidate, that's great. If you're not, that's not good. But if you apply to firms without openings and they're in your practice area, you will get jobs, just like everyone at Legal Authority that uses service. I mean, had incredible results. But if you allow yourself to apply to a lot of places, you're going to have very, very good results. And I can't stress this enough to you to do this. I've just seen the most incredible results. I had a woman that was in not too long ago. She was in, I don't know, Boulder, Colorado, and she was a family law attorney. And her husband was moving to some part of Wisconsin that wasn't well known. It was a kind of not a huge county in Wisconsin, but we sent her application to maybe the 20 firms in that county that did family law, and they couldn't believe it. They were like, wow, this is great. We've been needing a family law attorney for a long time. And even though she was in Denver or Boulder, and even though she had things that we consider unmarketable, like years and years of experience, she managed to get several offers. I mean, never would have happened had she been hanging out on LinkedIn and waiting for jobs to happen. So, you're going to have a lot of success when you open up your search and you apply to more places. You're also going to have a lot of success when you apply to firms that aren't on LinkedIn or Indeed. Like if you use Lawcross, which is a site of ours, that goes into monitors jobs on every law firm website and companies too. But those jobs on websites aren't always publicized. Half the time they're not. And And if you apply to them, you can do very well. So it's just, I've seen so many people get positions in firms. I would say that the percentage of people that we place is well above 50% of when we send them to firms that don't have openings. And you just need to understand kind of the economics of this and how it works. And I'm stressing this to you because I don't want you to be someone that goes out and runs their legal career by thinking that you can do well if you only apply to openings, because openings are often not where the market is. I mean, if you have a skill that's marketable, you should be trying to find places that can use your skill. You're a product, and if you're a product, that means that you can sell it in places where you have the ability to sell your product if you find the right buyer. This is why people advertise on television. So there's Google AdWords, all these sorts of things. But if firm's going to hire you, if it can make money hiring you, meaning you show up and they say, hey, yeah, we have a need. And if the firm has enough work to justify hiring you, they'll hire you. And it's as simple as that. Like right now, for example, we're in this point in time where trust in estates is this practice area that everybody wants. They have clients coming in that want trust in estates. They don't always publicize their jobs. And the firm will be like, yeah, I mean, if a trust in estates person shows up, we'll hire them. I have trust in estates attorneys that are following this paradigm right now of applying to firms without openings, and they're getting lots of interviews. It's crazy. So you don't want to limit your search to apply to only places with openings. You need to make sure that when you're marketing yourself, you need to make sure that you apply to lots and lots of places that don't have openings, because that's how you're going to get the best results. I've had so many success stories with this. I have every year I have people that are really talented young attorneys that, for whatever reason, they lose their job 6 months or 8 months, whatever, and they think they're completely out of luck. They come to me, and they may talk to another recruiter. The recruiter says, well, I can send you to a few places that have openings. I don't really have anybody, so good luck. They come to me, and I market them to 100 firms in the market, and they get jobs, and so this works. So another perception that people have is that everything's going to be fine as long as they keep working. And so what does that mean? It means, you often don't understand what's going on in your law firm. Law firms do go out of business. All sorts of bad things happen in law firms. I mean, groups of partners leave. Law firms may tell you everything's fine, and then they'll let go all sorts of partners and associates at a moment's notice. And they can be very, very dangerous places to work. And, regardless of where you're at, regardless of what a great law firm you're in, there's always lots of things that can go wrong. I mean, they're very secretive often about their finances. They're very secretive about different things that are happening in there that can affect you. And so you need to understand and manage your career very, very closely. It's always important, but to make sure you know what's going on in the market. So one thing that's very, very common, there's all these law firms, for example, in Silicon Valley, and they hire these huge classes, or not always huge, they could be small firms or large firms, doing all this sort of corporate work. And so people make the decision to go work at these firms, but they don't really realize that these same firms go through every 3 or 4 years or whatever, when things slow down, will lay off all the people doing corporate or whatever, and they're dangerous. And so, it's not just a question of you staying working, it's a question of you understanding, like, what are the dynamics of this firm? Like, how do people stick around? Is the firm safe? Like, what's happening? When I joined my second firm, Dewey Downton, I got there, and within the first 6 months of me being there, they'd let go, like I was on this big skyscraper in the whole row of 10 offices or something. By the time 6 months were gone, it was only me and one other partner that I happened to work for sitting on that floor. Everybody had left. And that's scary. Like, it's not just about doing the work. It's that all these sorts of things can happen. So what do? I think that the smartest thing you should be doing is you should always be looking at the market. You should always be seeing, where are their jobs? What's going on? Does it look like there's more jobs now, or there fewer jobs? You should always be making contact. I mean, I recommend everyone, you should always be looking at Indeed and LinkedIn. You should always be looking at Law Crossing to see, where are the jobs. You should always be networking so you have options if things go wrong. And what does that mean? It means you can't just sit there and think that law firm is going to take care of you. you need to make sure that you're meeting people. You need to make sure that you're talking with recruiters and things. And make sure you're protected when things slow down in your own law firm. I'm amazed. So I'll call I really do cold calling anymore, but when I did, I would call associates and they would hang up on me. But then I would call the most important partners in the firm, and they would be like, boom, the door would open. They want to hear everything I have to say. And what is that difference? The difference is that they're trying to learn everything they can, every piece of information they can. They want to learn about the market. They want to know what's going on, and they're always keeping their ear to the ground. And that's why they're successful partners, because they're out there getting information. So you need to make sure that you always have options available. You need to make sure. I frankly think that some of the best attorneys that I know are always looking for a job. They're always kind of out there. They'll go talk to people. They'll meet people. They'll apply for jobs. They'll do all these things because they're always making sure that they're protected, and they know that law firms can really go south quickly, and you're really never going to be protected unless you have clients. You need to make sure you're always keeping your ear to the ground and protecting yourself, because things will go wrong, and they always do. And you can often recognize some of these signs. I just kind of want to tell you what to look out for. You'll see people in management leaving, and you'll see a couple important partners or finance people leaving. The work will slow down. It'll be very, very kind of weird, like where's the work? You'll see partners in closed door meetings that we normally wouldn't see. You'll see, other people being asked to leave, like more than normal. You'll see all these things, and you'll sit there thinking, well, this isn't going to affect me. But yes, it does affect you. So anytime it looks dangerous, you need to start understanding, like, what are my options in the market? You should always be. I recommend keeping contacts with recruiters. I recommend watching jobs on BCG and seeing what's going on. I recommend, if you put your resume into BCG and we can work with you, which if you're a good attorney and you have experience in the small practice area, we'll start sending you jobs. I would recommend always being on the lookout for things. So, when you see things happening inside your firm, it's often time for you to understand what's going on. So you never can be safe at a law firm. You never are safe. And it's just how it works. And then people believe that if they have mentors, that mentor is always going to help them. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this, but a lot of people think that, their mentor is going to help them and so forth. And like I said earlier, you need a mentor, you need sponsors, you need to have people that you choose that have power in the firm, and that's who you choose. So who's your mentor? This is a very important question. So if you are a young attorney or a attorney and you have a mentor, is that mentor a non-equity partner without any business that doesn't have any power to help you? Or is that mentor someone that's like a big fish in the firm that has a lot of business and power? I mean, that's the people you need to get as mentors. You don't want to get mentors, people that are dissatisfied with the firm, people that don't have power in the firm, people that don't have business. And this is one of the biggest mistakes people make. You have to choose the right mentor. And if you have a mentor and that mentor doesn't have a lot of pull, you obviously need to learn from them and get the information that they have and see how people have succeeded and failed and get that information. But your real mentor needs to be the most powerful attorney in the firm. I know one attorney that got very, very close to the pretty much the most important partner at Point of Vanderbilt, someone that I know lives in Malibu, and he made so much money. First of all, that guy made a partner, but he made so much money that he retired, the age of 45 with a $20 million house in Malibu, overseas. I mean, it's just incredible. So if you're connected, he never had any business, by the way, he had a really good mentor, but if you choose the right mentor, that's going to help you advance. And if you get close to the right partners, that's how people advance so many careers. And this, by the way, just this, listening to this right now, may be the most important piece of career advice you ever received. You can become very, very rich and become very, very successful in a law firm if you have the right mentor. Mentor matters more than anything. I was on a plane not too long ago with a partner from Latham and Watkins in Orange County. It's happened to be sitting next to me. It's kind of weird. And he became a partner there in the corporate department. And the reason that happened is because he had a mentor, and that mentor had this huge book of business, 20 million or whatever. And he worked for him and just dedicated to him for 10 plus years. And then that partner is like, okay, I'm leaving and retiring. and he took over his business and became a big partner in an office that doesn't have a lot of corporate work. Not, I mean, it doesn't. It's not like the LA office, for example. Not a lot of corporate people there, but these mentors and these choosing the right mentor can be huge. I knew a guy that made partner at a big firm because he went on he worked his ass off for like 2 years on a case for this big important partner, and then that partner, he helped him in a trial and they won, and he made him a partner, and I mean, all these things can happen to you if you have the right mentors. Even partners need mentors. Like a lot of very successful partners in law firms that are equity partners, even they have worked very, very hard for a mentor that has a lot of business, and that mentor will make them a partner and keep them a partner, and because they have so much power, and the person works for them. And so these mentors are a hugely important thing. You can't just expect to go in and put your head down and be successful if you don't have a really good mentor. I mean, you need to have a mentor, and the mentor needs to have a power. And if they don't, then that's fine too, but you need to learn from them. The mentor will give you information. The mentor will tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, what to avoid, what to do, and all these sorts of things. So you can never be in a law firm without a mentor. And just I can't see, how many people have chosen the wrong mentor, and it just doesn't work. I knew one guy that worked at a big firm for like 10 years at Harvard Law School, like really, really good attorney, been at the same firm, but he got to a time where it was time for a partner, and he had no mentors. He had no one that could help him. And so he ended up leaving to start his own practice. He actually became very successful. But this just shows the value of mentors. You can work someplace for a long time and not have the right mentors. And so, if your mentor can't help you, then it's the wrong mentor. You need to have mentors that can help you and people that will sponsor you and help you advance. And it's very, very important. And this is one of the most important things you can understand with your career, especially in large law firms. Large law firms, you get the right mentor, you win. If you don't, you don't. And so all these people are there. Just think about how it works. You have all these associates just working and working and working, but maybe only a few of them have the right mentor. The right mentor will advance you. They'll say good things about you. They'll shut down criticism. They'll talk about your successes. All these sorts of things you need. So, I was in college, I had a mentor that helped me go to law school. When I was in high school, I had a mentor that helped me get into college, and all these sorts of things are very, very helpful. So a lot of things, this is another huge mistake, and I just want to make everyone aware of this one as well, is a lot of people think they can leave the practice of law in a law firm and then just come back later, meaning they can leave. There's nothing wrong with quitting for a while and doing something else for a few years and then coming back. And you absolutely cannot do that. Once you leave, it's not good. Now, women can leave to have kids. There's some exceptions to that, but it's very, very difficult to leave the practice of law and come back later. First of all, attorneys, once you start practicing law, you're really kind of expected to, unless you go into politics or whatever, if you want to work in a law firm, you're pretty much expected to stay working in a law firm for your career. Like they do not like it when you go in house. If you want to be a U.S. attorney and come back, that's okay. And that's a whole different discussion. But it's very, very difficult to leave the practice of law and then expect to be able to return at a later time. It's just, you can't. Once you leave the law firm, it becomes very, very difficult for you to come back. Why would a law firm want to take you back? Because they may think you were fired. They may think you left because you had psychological problems. They may think that the law firm practicing law wasn't a priority for you. You're competing against people that didn't leave. So you need to be very, very careful about this. And law firms are just not responsive when attorneys aren't working. It's just very, very difficult. You're expected to be working there. Now, I'm not saying that I can't get unemployed attorneys work and so forth, but you're always going to be competing with people that are working. So who's the better applicant? Just think about that. So if you're a law firm, you see one person that hasn't worked in a year, another person that's currently in a law firm working, obviously the best bet is going to be the person that's currently in a law firm. So the other thing that happens is if you leave a law firm once, the law firm knows that you're likely to leave again. So and that's what happens. Someone will leave a law firm and then they want to come back, and the law firm knows that they're likely, when they leave, they're likely to leave again. And it always happens. People leave for like a year or so or whatever, 6 months, and they go back to the law firm, and they almost always never come back. And they talk about this with a lot of professions. One of them is being a pilot. So they always say that someone stops being a pilot for like 6 months, like the people that are flying these giant planes and stuff, they rarely come back. And it's the same thing when you leave the practice of law. So either you're committed to it and want to do it and stick it out, and you want the profession, you want the whatever the law firm represents, you want that, you stick it out, or you don't. And here's another one. People think going in-house is a good career move. I talk about law firm hiring, so I'm going to tell you why going in-house can be very, very risky. Law firm jobs have their risk, but so do in-house jobs. So one of the things about law firms is that if you're working and generating money in your own work, pretty much you're a profit center for the firm, you're always going to have a job. Meaning, if you play the law firm game, and I don't care if you leave from a big firm to a smaller firm, and you bring in business, you're going to have a job for literally be the rest of your life. I've seen attorneys literally, practicing into their 90s. So you're always, if you have business, you're always going to be able to work. That's great. You develop business and you work. If you leave a law firm to go in-house, you're not coming back to a law firm. They just have no interest in it. I've seen people do make the transition from a in-house job back to a law firm. It's very, very rare. Now, if I have a candidate who's in-house and wants to work for a law firm, their odds of getting a position in a law firm are very, very slim. Because they're competing against people for the same jobs that are in law firms, that have been in law firms their whole career. Now, why is going in-house a bad idea? It's a bad idea because what happens is when you're in a law firm, you're a profit center, you're making money for the firm. When you're in-house, you may be saving the money, of course, but you're a cost center. You cost money. So law companies are always slimming down and looking to save money. Look at what happened when Elon Musk took over Twitter. He laid 70 or 80% of the staff off. You just, when your cost center, it becomes very, very difficult, and you're vulnerable to layoffs. Also, companies go out of business. Companies bring in new CEOs that want their own legal department. Nothing is more risky than going in-house, and it's a very, very difficult way to stay employed for the rest of your career, because you're suddenly just this kind of cost center that's moving around to different companies. Now, people do have very successful careers going in-house. They become general counsels of major corporations and incredibly successful. But at the same time, these jobs are very, very risky. And then when things change in companies, you'll lose your position. And it's difficult. And why do I promote law firms as opposed to going in-house? Because it's very, very difficult when you're in a law firm to get an in-house position. But imagine, but when you get an in-house position, really what they're hiring you for is they're hiring you for your kind of drive and your recent experience in the practice area and all these sorts of things. But people tend to lose that drive when they go in-house. They get there to do work, and then they start figuring out that they can take a lot of that work and put it back to law firms and say, oh, it'd be malpractice if I worked on it and so forth. This is what they do. And then eventually the often let go. It's just a difficult job working in-house, having access to work all the time. Whereas, there are law firms in every city in the country. They're all over. There's tons of them. And so if you have that experience and you commit to it, you can pretty much always work in a law firm. If you have good expertise and something and that you can do, it could be family law, it can be whatever, insurance defense. If you stay in a law firm, you can typically always find a job. Doesn't mean you're going to find a job if there's no corporate, everybody's getting laid off in some market in corporate in New York City. It means you have to look at smaller markets in New York, but you can pretty much always find a job, and in-house positions are much more difficult to find. So I've seen attorneys spend years looking for an in-house position. It's very, very difficult. Imagine, when I look at the resumes, and I'm just kind of giving you this advice, I look at resumes of attorneys that have gone in-house. And then often what happens is they're there for a year or two, then they bounce around, and they go to another in-house job, and they bounce around, they go to another one. And then there's often these breaks in their resume and so forth. And, would that attorney have been better off had they stayed in a law firm and maybe become like a real expert in something and been able to develop business and have a career for the rest of their lives? You don't see in-house counsel like in their 60s and stuff, hardly ever. But you see attorneys in every city in the country that are practicing law firms that are in their 60s and so forth. And then here's just another thing about performance reviews. I'm just going to give you a little bit of detail about how those work. Typically, during your first year or your second year inside of a law firm, law firms are going to give very, very negative performance reviews because they want you to improve. Usually has not a lot to do with your performance. Now, if the market's very, very good and it's hard for them to hold on to people or and that sort of thing, maybe not as much. But young attorneys will always get these kind of reviews because they're trying to push them to improve. They'll be incredibly critical of their work. They'll want them to learn from their mistakes. They'll scare them. They'll make them learn how to walk on pins and needles and make mistakes. And first and second year attorneys not really that profitable firm because they need to write off a lot of their time. They don't know what they're doing, and so they're not always making money off these young attorneys. But sometimes you're not going to get bad reviews if the firm's really, really busy because they don't want anybody to leave. But at the same time, you often get very bad reviews. But by your third year in a law firm, I'm just kind of telling you how this whole process works. If your hours are good enough and you've kind of got to the point where you know what you're doing, the law firm is going to start giving you glowing reviews because this is when they start making the real money. The law firms start making the money off you between like your third and sixth or seventh year because you can understand what you're doing. The law firm doesn't need to write up a lot of your time. It looks good to their clients to give work to an associate to save money. And so they'll start instead of the partners doing them, and you're more competent than a junior associate. And so you'll start getting these great reviews. And it's just because you're profitable. The law firm's making money off you. You know what you're doing. And so the last thing in the world they want to do is lose you. So they're going to start, they don't have to worry about making you partners. So they're going to start giving you these, assuming the firm has work, they're going to give you these glowing reviews and tell you you've got all this future and you're just wonderful. And then they may give you a few negative things, but the law firm really wants to keep you around at this point. They want to give you good reviews. It's in their best interest to, and so they're going to blow you up, and they're going to continue giving you good performance reviews. If the work slows down, it'll stop. Suddenly you'll get bad performance reviews, or sometimes you may have pissed off the wrong person to get bad performance reviews. You don't know, but in the general sense of how performance reviews work, they want to give you good performance reviews when you're earlier in your career. That's just when you're kind of a mid-level associate. So you have no idea. There could be political things going on that would affect that, but that's pretty much how it works. Now, when you get to your 7th to 10th year in a lot of firms, and these years are kind of malleable, you can move them forth. But once you get to like your 7th or 10th year, the situation changes. So unless you have a lot of portable business, or you show potential to give a lot of business, the law firm may start giving you a soft push, or they may give you a little bit of encouragement. Maybe they may want to make you part. You just never know. But for most attorneys, they may start giving you a soft push. Now, law firms are different these days. There's firms that have non-equity partner roles that aren't that difficult to get, but there's compared to what it would pass the income bank, so equity partner. But the law firm will often, by the time you get to this point, they'll start saying, maybe there's not a lot of opportunity to be a partner. Maybe you should start looking around, or they'll just kind of give these negative performance reviews that we weren't happy of what happened here. I was talking to one woman who was very funny. She was actually it wasn't funny. She was in a major U.S. law firm in the Los Angeles office. They're getting great reviews for her whole career for the past several years. And then she walked into a review. It was like in her 8th year, and they said, "Wow, we've been talking about this, and we're not that enthusiastic about your prospects because 2 years ago, like so and so tried to give you an assignment, and you said you didn't have time. You could have taken the work." And so they started pushing her out, and she was just amazed. She said, "How did this happen?" And so this kind of stuff can happen. So, at some point in a law firm, the law firm, if you're getting negative, you'll start getting maybe negative performance reviews, and they'll often ask you to leave. It's just how it's always worked for large law firms, or they'll tell you it would be in your best interest to start looking for a new position. And just so you understand kind of the dynamics of it, when you become more senior, like close to 8-10 years and that sort of thing, the law firm has to charge a higher billable rate for you. The clients, that rate is meaning that it doesn't look as good to clients if you're giving work to a senior associate with a high billing rate. And also, the partners often make more money when they do work on their own. So they would prefer to do that work because they get paid more for working on their own matters and giving it out to other people. So it just becomes much more difficult to stay around because the clients would prefer the partner to do it. The partner will often say the partner can make 30% of the revenue of the work they do on their own and 15% of other people. When it's a lot of money at stake, maybe it's $1,500 an hour, and your rate as a senior associate, maybe 12 or whatever, the partner is going to prefer to do the work themselves, not going to be excited for you to stick around anytime. So it's all these things that are important to understand. Reviews, different size firms. Some firms don't give reviews, but that kind of dynamic operating, in the background is something the union need to understand and how their kind of reviews work. And it's not going to go into a lot more detail. And then some people believe that they're better off in a large law firm as opposed to a smaller law firm, or smaller law firm as opposed to a larger law firm. Attorneys often believe that they should be working in the largest and most prestigious law firms they can get into, as I talked about earlier. Other people believe that they're better off in smaller law firms because of everything negative heard about the law firms. And I want to give a little bit of insight into this matter because it is an important point that people are, when they're looking for jobs, think about when they're choosing where to work. The benefit of a larger law firm, of course, the pay, but the benefit of really trying to work in a larger law firm, why their larger law firms are typically better and get better results, and you can make more money, is because they will do work on behalf of large clients that can pay a lot of money for the best legal services possible. So they will be able to, really go in deep and make sure the work is perfect and have the best people on it. Those large law firms often have very, very formal processes in place, from hiring, firing, to bringing in clients, conflict checks, to compensating partner, all this sort of stuff. And they're like sophisticated businesses, but they're often very difficult to advance in because, especially the older they are. And so you go to a large law firm, you're often more likely to get so disillusioned you'll drop out of the practice of law because you don't like it, and that's not always the right thing to do. And so my opinion is, if you get experience in a large law firm, that's very good because you'll get to work on larger clients. But if you join smaller firms, you're much more likely to be practicing law than 5 years from now, whatever, 10 years from now, people that join larger firms. So I see people coming out of law school, coming out of LLM programs, and thinking always like, I need to work in a major firm somewhere. But they don't realize that, and I do this example on a lot of these webinars, that there may be 2,000 cities in the state of New York, or 3,000 or 4,000 in California, and that 200 or whatever, 2,099 of them are not Los Angeles. I mean, there are all these other places. And so there's so many places you can work. And a lot of times people that work in smaller law firms are actually happier. They earn more money. They have more time with their family. Their children are better, well-adjusted. They're more confident. They have more opportunities to bring in clients because they're smaller. They get along better with the people they're working with. They're not part of this large institutional creature. And so you just have to really decide, what's best for you. If your goal is to do the most sophisticated work possible and you're all gung-ho, then you definitely belong in a large law firm. But you should not take it as any type of insult or anything if you end up in a smaller law firm, because you can actually have a very good life there. And the same goes if you're in a smaller law firm. Like smaller people in smaller law firms with ambition, and I would say the majority of the attorneys in smaller law firms, more than 50%, do have some ambition, would love to work in a larger law firm. So they will, run their careers in a smaller law firm to move to a larger law firm. But you need to do what's best for you and understand these different types of law firms. And I bring this one up because, as I told you earlier, that huge number of attorneys that I know of that have went to large law firms, were able, got divorces and so forth. So you start your career very happy, thinking you're succeeding, like you have this big paycheck, you're able to provide for your family or whatever, and then you get married, and then your partner realizes that they're never really around, and then when you're home, you're kind of all this negative energy and are stressed out and maybe drinking after work or getting stoned every night and whatever. But you realize it's very, very stressful, and because of the stress and not being around, it can be very, very difficult on your marriage and your ability to have relationships with other people. So I talk about this because it's very, very common. That's the life you live as an attorney, especially in those most competitive firms, is really incompatible with being a good mother or father or spouse to whoever you're with. And many times you're unhappy at home because your spouse is mad at you. So you'll have an affair. Your spouse will have affairs, and I just. God, I remember I shouldn't even tell the story, but I'm going to tell it. I was maybe my senior year in college, and I was in a bar, and this guy was sitting next to me. He's like in a leather coat, like he was a policeman, but he was like a detective or something, really cool guy. And I was, God, I mean, anyway, he told me that he had two girlfriends whose husbands were young attorneys. And I was like, wow. And he's like, well, they're never around. It's like I see them all the time during the day. I mean, it's really kind of disgusting stuff. But I never forgot that because I was like, wow. So these guys are out there working, and what? I don't know. It's just I'm telling you that because life as an attorney, never being around it. Most attorneys, I mean, are married, have very, very good close relationships with their spouses, but you just you have to think about like what kind of results is that going to have with your relationships with significant others or even your children. So the fast one is a lot. This happens to a lot of attorneys, and I only bring this up because I've seen so many attorneys die, like a lot of them, very young, like late 30s, early 40s, all this sort of thing. One attorney I was representing, he was at Baker Botts, working these incredible hours in New York. He was a really nice guy. His name was Jeff Sullivan, and I had a really nice relationship with him for years. I really liked this guy, and we never moved firms or anything. We just kind of hit it off. I don't know. I used to talk. He worked these incredible hours there. Was very well regarded at the firm. But not seeing anything negative about the firm, but he, really gave it his all. And then he decided, after a couple of years of work like nonstop, he was going to go home and visit his family. And he got home, and then his first night home, he died of a heart attack. And then I knew another attorney. I'm not going to say the name of the firm, but same kind of thing, working all these hours, staying up all night, and then he had to fly somewhere, and then got to the airport, just died. He was at 30, and then in an office building, training working for me, working in that office building. I remember he was a young guy, like in his 30s or something. Wasn't coming at the office, and where this guy was gone for like no one knew where he was for a couple of weeks, and then he was found dead in his apartment in his home for 2 weeks. And I mean, I'm just saying all this stuff because I believe that being healthy and not drinking alcohol too much or having good eating habits, controlling your stress and other issues can become a problem. And how you practice your career. These attorneys, I mean, that get into this. I mean, you see them like when they're kind of fresh out of law school, and then you see them like 5 or 10 years later, and they're completely unrecognizable. Their health is just not good. Their skin's not good. Their weight's not good. They don't have time to exercise. They're kind of getting satisfaction from alcohol and food and promiscuity. I don't know, but it can be very, very difficult. And I bring this up because I can't tell you, like, I could start counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could start counting all the attorneys that I know that have died very early, just heart attacks and all that sort of thing, or cancer, and just really bad health problems because they're pushing themselves so hard into billing all these hours and doing all this stuff, and it puts them in a position where they're not healthy and they're not doing well. So you get very, very serious health problems many times if you're not taking care of yourself, and people don't think it will happen to them, but it does. I mean, I remember this one guy that was a really good-looking guy and smart, NYU and things. And I saw him like 15 years after I first saw him, and the guy looked like a freaking sailor. Like, he was really healthy, but everything about him. I mean, he looked like a sailor from the 1800s that had scurvy or something, and it was just because of how hard he was working. And this job is stressful, so you have to realize that if you don't give time for yourself and take care of yourself, it can eat you alive. And no one, by the way, if you're working in a law firm and you're working very unhealthy and you're working all these hours and you're not taking care of yourself, no one's going to tell you to stop or slow down because why would they? You're making the money, so you have to take care of yourself. And law firms, if you don't take care of yourself, you can become addicted. You can become, and I don't like to use the word fat, but you cannot take care of your weight or your cholesterol, and you can, the stress and the bad diet and the alcohol lead to cancer and heart attacks and all sorts of things. And I've seen this so many times. I mean, I know so many people that this has happened to. I mean, it's a lot. And so what is your priority? Now, you can definitely take care of yourself in the law firm. You go to the gym during lunch, you can eat healthy, you can walk to work. I mean, there's all this, I mean, for New York, but there's all sorts of things you can do to take care of yourself. But you need to make sure you take care of yourself. And often what you'll see too is in the best attorneys and the biggest firms do take care of themselves. So you just have to make sure that you don't put yourself in a position where you're not just chasing all those billable hours, because there's a cost benefit analysis and you need to look out for yourself, and you'll contribute more and be better when you're taking the best care of yourself, and no one's going to tell you to slow down. So I think you've learned a lot so far today. I'm just, there's lots and lots of problems with major firms, how they with your job and with the legal profession that you may not realize. And even when the information I provide you today, I hope will help you make career decisions. I hope it will. Everything that I told you, whether it's taking care of your health or all these different things, should really make you much more successful and happier than you would otherwise be choosing the right law firm. And I really hope you took notes, because this is really important stuff. And I think that when you can understand it and really absorb what I'm talking to you about, I mean, you can succeed as opposed to choosing the right size law firm, choosing the right sphere, learning about all this. And so, this information makes you more successful. You're, as an attorney, by the way, you're a small business. You're selling your skills to a firm, and then you're selling your skills to clients, and you're trying to stay in business, and you're trying to operate the type of business you want. What kind of business do you want? And so you need this information. You need all this stuff to be successful. Okay, so what I'm also going to do today is we had some questions that were unanswered in last week's webinar. So I wasn't able to get to all those, so I'm going to answer them. So one thing to realize is that if I do not answer your questions today, we will, then they don't look like great questions. And there's always kind of a time limit on these webinars, because I have obviously time. I have other things. This is very important, but I have often other things I need to kind of get to, that time demands. This webinar actually went a little bit longer than I expected, but it's again, very, very important webinar. And this, I think some of this information for you can actually be life-changing for you if you really absorb everything I'm talking about. And, I watch, there's all these people out there that charge lots of money to watch this kind of stuff. And this advice you're getting is free, and you're learning from someone. It doesn't matter who you're learning it from, but I've been doing this for a quarter of a century. It's so many success stories and failure stories. So, because the first question is, can you expand on how attorneys can more actively seek the right guidance at the start of their careers, especially, let's see here, in an environment where mentors may not always be available? What resources or strategies do you recommend for navigating these early career decisions, particularly in the absence of strong mentorship? So all mentorship is you have to seek out people that can help you give you advice. So people are like people that like them. So you try to find people that you may, that you like inside of a firm. You talk to people. You try to get work from people that you feel have a lot of work and that can help you. You do good work for them. You try to seek out people that can help you. Now, what is a good mentor? Like a lot of attorneys, like the most successful attorneys with a lot of business and work, aren't always going to want to be your mentor, right? I mean, think about that. They're busy and all sorts of stuff. So often the way to get close to them is to do as much work as you can for them, and then to be in a position where they want to help you or answer questions. And so you just need to be kind of out there meeting different people. Now, I think this is actually a pretty good question at another level, and I want to kind of touch on that because I think it's a good question. So you need to learn as an attorney, the better you are at this, the more successful you're going to be. You need to learn how to kind of network with other attorneys. And what does that mean? That means when you're in a firm, all these people are potential clients. So you have to look at the world as people as being potential clients. So what does that mean? That means that every partner that's giving you business is no different than, or giving you work to do, is no different than having a client that's giving you work when it's an outside client outside the law firm. So in order to get work, in order to be well known, you need to network and get business and meet work from different types of attorneys. And then you need to start relationships with attorneys that could give you work later on. I mean, all these sorts of things can make a huge difference in how successful you are. So it means that maybe you're getting work right now from one partner, but maybe there are other partners that can give you work in the future. So how do you find them? You find them by just chatting with them, going to Friday night cocktail hour, going out and meeting them at firm events and stuff. You network within your own firm. By networking within your own firm, you're going to have the potential to get mentors and work and be well known. So that's what I recommend. I recommend that when you get into a firm, every partner there with business is a potential client. So you need to act just like you would act if you were out there trying to get a client for any business. I don't care what your business is, it can be window washing or whatever. You need to, someone that's good, that has any type of good business, is able to network very, very effectively with other people within that they're trying to serve. So you need to be able to really, my biggest piece of advice is treat everyone in the firm like a potential client. Now, what is that? And it actually goes a little bit deeper than that. And this is a very good question. So it goes a little bit deeper than that because your potential client are not just partners. Your potential client is not just partners. It's also other associates, because other associates will become general counsels, right? So they'll become general counsels and things like that. So these people, these other associates are potential clients. Everybody you meet is a potential client. A secretary is a potential client because they may work at another firm later that you could work at. I mean, all these sorts of things you could work with. So everybody you meet is a potential client. You should try to be nice to everyone, including the people that you're competitive with. You should try to look at everybody you meet as a potential client. You show them you have a good work ethic. You do all these things and treat them like potential clients. And if you do that, you can be very, very successful. And this is what the best people do. A lot of times you get into a law firm and you may make enemies of other associates. You may not try to connect with all the partners. You may not try to connect with other associates and be nice to people. And secretaries, I mean, they can help you. They can, a lot of times people get in trouble or they're helped by how they treat their secretary, or how the secretary speaks of the quality of work that they do, and all sorts of things to other partners. And then if you're rude to the secretary, that upsets other partners. I mean, there's all these things you can do in your career to get mentors and to be thought of well. But mentors really will be people that typically you share something in common with, that you like. And I mean, it's just, mentors are, very, very important. Okay. What's this question? How can you provide more clarity on how we can accurately gauge the best time to make a lateral move, especially when balancing short-term stability with long-term growth? What specific indicators should I be looking for in my current role that would suggest it's time to look for opportunities? Okay, well, I talked a lot today about small firms, large firms, all that's, in different places you can work, but why do you make a lateral move? Like, what are the reasons to make a lateral move? What are the reasons to leave one firm and go to another? There's lots of reasons to do that, but I'll talk about some of the more common ones. One is just, culture not right for you. Culture not right for you, not meshing with the people there. I mean, that's one big thing right there. Like, the culture could be the wrong culture. You could not get along with people. So every law firm has different types of cultures. Sometimes the culture is just not right. And if you're in a culture where you're meshing with the people correctly and where you're happy, then that's a place you should stay. But if you're in a culture where you're not meshing with the people and you're unhappy, that's probably not a place you should stay. So you need to understand like kind of the differences between cultures at different firms. And if you find a firm that if you're unhappy in one culture, maybe it's time to move. If you want to move to a firm with lower hour, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons that people move, and I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about them, but you want to make sure that when you're moving to a place where the culture works for you. But the biggest reason and the most important reason to move, and again, I could talk about reasons to move forever, but the best when I place people, when I give people jobs as a recruiter, the best way to place them is when there's upward mobility. Upward mobility meaning you're moving someplace to get better experience, larger clients, whatever, larger clients, and better experience means something like working on, working for more in your practice area, that sort of thing. So when a law firm's looking at your resume, they always want to see that they like it when they see upward mobility. So maybe you start at one firm that doesn't have so great of a reputation in your practice area. So you move to a firm with a bigger bench in your practice area. I mean, all these sorts of things. So upward mobility is very important. Law firms love to see that. And that's one reason. But sometimes, if you want long-term career growth, the firm you're at may not work. So when I was thinking personally about moving firms, I was asking myself questions like, can I go to a place that has, can I move to a firm that may have, excuse me, if I move to a firm, can I go to a place where it's easier for me to build a book of business because I want to have a book of business, and that would be a long-term objective? Or can I move to a firm where I can have a work-life balance? I mean, there's all sorts of things that, would gauge whether or not you want to make a move, and long-term career growth and all these things, consider. But those are some of the things. I hope I gave you a good answer. But if you should be looking, I talked also about that. If the law firm you're in has issues. Let's see. I found it particularly eye-opening when you talked about attorneys staying too long in positions when they have no open mobility. Can you provide more practical advice on how to recognize when you've hit a ceiling within your own law firm, and what steps should be taken to make a strategic exit without burning bridges or harming your reputation in the legal community? Okay, well, you're never going to harm your legal profession and legal community by looking at other options and moving someplace different. The desire for mobility, I think, is important. So upward mobility can be moving sideways to a firm that's no different. Upward mobility can be moving to a larger firm or smaller firm. I do think there's a risk of staying in a position where nothing good's going to come of it, meaning where you've got a limited shelf life. So certain firms, if you have to leave, or you're not going to have a future. That's kind of scary. So, what do you think? What about that? You have to kind of worry about that. But based on everything I talked about today, I think you can kind of understand some of the reasons that it would make sense to move and not stay too long in a place. If you want to have a long-term career practicing law, I mean, in a law firm, the ultimate objective is to be in a position where you have authority and where you can bring in business, or where you have access to work. So the whole idea of having access to work is something that a lot of attorneys don't think about, but your whole career really is based on having access to work. Like, do you have solid access to work, and are you going to have access to work in the future? What does that mean? So access to work means someone or some buddies giving you work, right? So you have to, if you're in a law firm and you know that there's a limited shelf life where they're going to be giving you work, meaning if you get too senior, you're not going to have work. That's kind of scary. So you want to be in a position where you have access to work, where you have people that are always going to be giving you work, whether it's clients or the firm. So anytime it looks like you're not going to have work, then it's time for you to think about moving to a place that is going to give you work, meaning it could be a smaller firm. Maybe you're just a smaller firm and you want to go to a larger firm with more work, but you need to have access to work. And ultimately, you can do that in a couple of different ways. One, you can become a partner and get a really mentor and not have to worry about work because they have a lot of work, or you can get work on your own, but you need to always have access to work. One of the reasons I talk about how risky it is to go in-house is because when you go in-house, you can't be guaranteed you're going to have access to work. It's very, very scary. Like, why would I go in-house when I may not have long-term access to work? Like, I could lose my job, and then what do I do? But if you're in a law firm, you can build up a book of business, you can get close to people. So you always want to consider, anytime you're considering or thinking about leaving a firm, you need to really think about, am I going to have long-term access to work? Because that's how everything works. Yeah, having long-term access to work is really one of the most important, the most important aspect of having a career. I wish I could, put this on people's desk, like, how long am I going to have access to work? And so, when you're in a law firm, you may be in a position where you don't think you're going to have access to work, or the law firm's not going to give you access to work. You'll be at a small firm or long term. Like, does a small law firm even have enough work to give me work? Like, you have to have work. And so work to do is the most important thing that an attorney can do. They can get it in the law firm they're in, or they can work and get access to work on their own, or they can move to another firm with work, but you always need to have access to work. That's the whole reason to moving. Now, that's also the quality of the work. Like, am I getting access to better work and more work? So one of the benefits of large law firms is they have huge clients, and those huge clients are willing to kind of write endless checks for the work. And so if you go to a firm like that can give you work over the long term, that's a very, very good position to be in, if you can continue with it. I mean, I was talking to a guy on Friday, and he had started at this big New York firm 15 years ago, and as coming out of like a Rutgers Law School or something, but had been at that firm for 15 years. They made him a non-equity partner. He has plenty of work to do. There's lots of work, but he's a non-equity partner, and doesn't have making the kind of money he wants to make. So he's thinking about moving to another firm. And the question is will that other firm give him access to work? Like, that's what he has to be concerned about. Will they have long-term access to work if he moves to this firm, where he could be a partner, but maybe they don't have as much work for him to do? So there's something for him to think about. So I always encourage you to think about having access to work. Okay. For those, and again, I wish this is the most important rule for moving: access to work, quality of the work, access to work. You may move to work firm because you want better work. Access to work is the most important thing to think about in your career. It's how the game works. That's why you can practice into your 90s if you have a book of business. I mean, those of us who have work are always busy. Okay, for those of us who are still in the early stages of our careers and haven't had many opportunities to develop client relationships, what actionable steps can we now take to start building a book of business that will position us for long-term success? How can we balance this while still meeting the demands of billable hours? Okay, I'm not going to talk a lot about this because I think I talk about it a lot of different places, but if you're billing 2,000 hours a year in your law firm, you really want to develop work, it probably makes sense for you to try to bill another 1,000 or 2,000 developing work. This is what the most successful attorneys do. They don't just sit around to take work from the law firm, but they go around and they figure out how to develop business. And personal relationships are incredibly important. Meeting people, having a product to sell, and just getting yourself out there. And this is what you have to do. You cannot sit still and expect to be successful in most law firms unless you're able to bring in work. And I know of countless attorneys that give a massive percentage of their time to developing client relationships and making that something that's a priority for them. And even in the early stage of your career, you need to realize that everybody you meet in your law firm, associates, partners, are potential clients in the long run. They're short-term clients if you're in a law firm because they're giving you work to do, but you need to start getting out there and meeting people and learning how to do it. And then I've done webinars on how to develop business. I've written lots of articles about it, but you need to look at those and kind of make that a priority. And if you're if you're expecting to be successful, you need to make sure that this is something that you're doing. I mean, you need to make sure that you're always trying to develop relationships in business, and needs to be a priority. This is what people that become successful do. Okay, let's see here. I'm receiving consistently positive performance reviews, but I don't feel fulfilled in my role. How can I differentiate between being in the wrong firm versus being in the wrong legal field altogether as a way to assess whether it's the firm's culture or my long-term path that needs adjustment? Okay, I think a lot of the stuff that I talked about earlier is important just because I talked about reviews, I talked about being in the right firm, I talked about, the culture of the firm, but, ultimately you should be happy doing the work. So that means that whatever work you're being given, you should enjoy. You should do your best you should enjoy the work that you're doing. And then all this other stuff for cultures and things are really about the environment you're in, large firm, small firm, but ultimately you need to like what you're doing. And if you don't like the work that you're doing and you can't see yourself doing the work and you can't see yourself working for others for the rest of your career, then you're probably, helping clients and things. You probably are uh, don't should not be an attorney if you don't enjoy it. And I hate to be so blunt about that, and I don't know that that's what you want to hear, but I think that's yeah. And I do have extra questions today that I'm not going to get to because I want to answer some of these questions from last week, and I'll do the same thing with the questions this week. I tried to summarize. We tried to have most of these summarized that, and there were several that overlapped and so forth. So I'm trying to answer the most important ones here. Okay, many attorneys I know have transitioned in-house and seem content, but I've noticed that the role seems limited to specific functions. If I want to maintain a broad legal set and keep my options open for going for future moves, is going in-house a mistake? How can I assess whether an in-house role would restrict my future opportunities? The in-house role is always going to restrict you because in most cases you're not going to have employment stability. The quality of work you do is kind of hit or miss. Like, if firms hiring someone from an in-house job, they don't know what kind of quality of work is expected. It's not a law firm. So going in-house, I think, is a very dangerous move because it can restrict your opportunities in the future. Because if you lose an in-house job, it's not easy to find another in-house job. And it can, and you can't go to a law firm. It's going to impact how long you can practice law. You will lose access to work. So if you're in a law firm and they're giving you work, you have access to work. If you are in a law firm, you develop clients, you have access to work. But if you're in a in-house job, you only have one client, and that client is mercurial. They could fire you, they could go out of business, they could merge, a new CEO could come in, a new general counsel could come in and want to bring all their own people. These are not secure jobs. And so if I was an attorney practicing right now, I would be running my career in a way that I'm always going to have access to work. Now, you may go into an in-house job and it may be awesome, and you may find the perfect company and be able to have a long-term career there and then move from there to be a general counsel of some big company or something. But one of the things you'll see when you look at people that become general counsels of the largest companies, they are typically people that have been partners in large law firms. So leaving early in your career is often a fairly dangerous decision to make if you leave, because the general counsel of the largest companies are often going to be partners from big law firms. How it works. So and they're often people that were working for the firm. So and when they go to work in house, they are commanding huge salaries and stock options and all this sort of stuff, and you can make millions or tens of millions of dollars being a general counsel, but you need to be very careful about how you go about it. Okay, someone asked last week with access to the slides. Yes, the slides are always posted after the webinar. Person says, I'm starting a solo practice. I have great schools and work experience, beginning a large firm, working in-house, a large global conglomerate for 26 years, but I'm now over 60, and it's seemingly impossible to find another job. Take time to take control of my destiny. However, this is the first time in my career that I've had to get clients. Any tips on that would be appreciated. Yeah. So if you are not able to get a job in your 60s, it's very common. I mean, law firms are businesses and they want to hire younger people that are more malleable and will work harder and all sorts of things. So if you have to start a solo practice, like what do you do? Now, if you worked in-house for a global conglomerate, you're probably doing corporate related work. I don't know. But yes, it's going to be very, very hard for you to find a job. And it's also going to be very, very hard for you to open a solo practice doing corporate work because most companies that would hire you to do the work are going to have large law firms that do the kind of work you do. So how do you start a solo practice when you're 60? My advice, I'll just kind of pull this up here real briefly. Let me see here. I'm just going to try to do share the right screen. Give me 1 second. And this is actually very good questions. I'm going to I want to answer it in a way that kind of helps you and helps people that are thinking about starting their own solo practice. Like, what do you do? Like, how do you start your own solo practice? And it's actually a very easy question to answer. And I'm sort of excited about showing you right now. Okay, so when you're looking for a position or trying to start your own practice, what you have to do is you have to select. In most cases, you have to go to do a practice area that is consumer facing, meaning if you're in your 60s and you have been in-house, you're not going to get, for the most part, corporate clients. It's just not going to happen. Now, you may be able to do like small corporate matters if you set up an office or your firm in some area of the country, but you're really going to have to concentrate on doing consumer facing type of work. Now, I don't think you're going to want to do criminal law defense, but there's all these other practice areas that are kind of interesting. There's like education, plaintiff's representation. You can learn about it. It's suing school districts and so forth. Probably not from a litigation background, but anybody can learn at any age. Family law is a consumer facing practice area. I see attorneys all the time set up practices doing that. They become very successful. There's family law attorneys needed all over the country. Immigration is probably not something you'd enjoy, but that's a consumer facing practice area. There's, trust in the states is a very good practice area. So any practice area where you're working for individuals as opposed to companies are always very good practice areas to start. So anytime you're looking for a position, let me just see your question. Anytime you're looking for a position, trying to start your own solo practice, you're always going to be very well suited if you try to, let's make sure I'm sharing the right screen, if you try to do a consumer facing practice area. Okay, are there, if you start your own law firm straight out of law school experience, are there websites and knowledge you need to run your own law firm and get the legal know-how? Yes, there are all sorts of websites online that will teach you how to be whatever type of attorney you want to be, to how to start your own practice, to how to do personal injury law, to how to start whatever practice area you're interested in. There are websites and groups and subscription sites and so forth that you can join that will help you get that kind of experience. Can you find some of the authors' names you mentioned in the chat? I don't remember this from last week, this authors, but I think I was talking about like Anthony Robbins. Anthony Robbins, very good person to read. I've always liked Napoleon Hill, especially Think and Grow Rich. The one I like is Og Mandino. Was the greatest salesman in the world. I know it's something like that. So there's lots of resources out there if you want to, if you to get inspired. It's you have to be inspired to some extent. What you want to do, and these kind of authors and things will show you what's possible, who you can become, all that sort of thing, which I think is very valuable to anyone. You need to be inspired, and being inspired is just learning what you're capable of, learning that you're not necessarily limited by whatever your past. Okay, can you talk a little bit about brief writing contractor business? You mentioned, why would someone want to do contracting when they start their own firm? Is the work nature too limited in scope to generate a business? Is it necessary to get your own malpractice insurance for contract? Okay, so I think this question is about, and again, last week, I'm just answering a question from last week, but this question is about, should you be like a contractor as opposed to starting your own firm? I think anybody, like, you don't need to ever have to take a staff attorney position. You don't ever need to have to be some kind of contractor, whatever, working by the hour for Robert Half or whatever. You don't need to do that. You can always find a job. And that's the problem with so many attorneys, is they just limit themselves and they don't see the whole world of opportunity. And the whole world of opportunity means whatever state you're in, there's thousands and thousands of law firms and attorneys you can work for that will hire you as an associate or whatever, or to work for them. It's just people's minds are too limited by thinking about only the jobs and geographic areas in front of them. So I don't recommend that anyone, I know there's nothing wrong with working as a contractor to make money and so forth, but I think it makes the most sense to take your skills and try to build your own firm and your own, something you have control over, instead of just taking these hourly rates and moving around. I mean, I remember I never got into the staff attorney or type of, or contract attorney business, but these contract attorneys will sit around, look at it at 7 in the morning, and say, "Hey, we have a job for you in this place over, to go do document review today," and the job may last 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden they have to go somewhere else, and it's just, I don't think that's a good life. I think you should spend that time trying to to develop something on your own, and now maybe use that to learn, and I don't know, but I think you're always going to be better off if you're able to have your own control of your investing. Okay, you mentioned solo practitioners exercising inferior work due to lack of experience or skill degradation. What ways can non-traditional law students avoid or combat the specter of passing the bar without working in a law firm? So the quality of work that you do as a solo, no one's looking over your work. No one is showing you how to do things correctly. You're not, so what do? You have to make sure that you understand what good work product is. You have to look at what other attorneys are doing. That you have to see, like, and absorb that and see, what can I do to be good? What are they doing that's enabling them to get an edge on me? Because when you're solo, no one is telling you what to do and how to do it and showing you how to do it. It's just, you're just kind of making it up as you go along. So yes, you need to use, online resources and things. You need to look at what other people are doing. You learn from examples, and it's never been easier. I mean, there's so many sources of briefs and different products from all these online providers about different things. Different types of work. You can literally find almost anything online. So, but you need to make sure that when you do that stuff, you're not making mistakes, and you control your own work, and you kind of learn what you're doing, because that's the problem with that being solo, is you have to be internally motivated to do good work, and you have to learn how to do good work. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being on this webinar today. I think that this was amazing, how much material we covered and how much you learned. I commend you for spending so much time here. Just as you saw that I came back and did some unanswered questions from last week, I'll do the same thing with next week's webinar. I apologize for not getting to all the questions. I really hope you learned a lot. I gave 100% here today because I really want to help you get better in your career and do well. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you.